And welcome into the Wednesday edition of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Elijah Campbell here with you on this Wednesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. A rainy Wednesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. It's gross out there, so make sure you're careful as you're heading into work, home from work, wherever you may be traveling to on this Wednesday morning. Joe Rexrode, what's going on? How we doing?
Doing okay. Kind of wish I, could wake up later and stay up later so I didn't miss Damian Lillard last night. But apparently Elijah is enough of a hoops junkie to have seen it. 55 points.
55 points on like 20-something shots.
It's not bad.
In a loss.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part.
Unfortunately for Dame. Talk about a guy who carries a team.
Yeah, absolutely. He's playoff time especially. He's fun to watch. Had some big moments for Portland.
It's actually it's too bad for him because he like Steph Curry is what he is, and so I think people don't talk about Dame enough.
I agree,
but he is he's outrageous, man. I'd love to see him have a shot with a team, to make a run.
Elijah, how you feeling today?
Well, a little tired. Damian Lillard didn't let me sleep last night because that thing did go to 2 overtimes.
Yeah.
But it is a crime, however, though, that the game was on NBA TV and not nationally broadcasted. But you know what? I'd do it again. That was totally worth it. I'd watch someone score 55 points and 2 overtimes, go 12 of 16 from 3, break an NBA record.
I'd say so.
And
it was fun.
So the national broadcast was the Lakers getting destroyed by 30,
getting
which
thumped.
is still worth the watch, right?
Yeah.
Not to Elijah.
Not to me. But, I quit watching after the first quarter. I knew after that first quarter it was done. Or that 24-1 run that happened in the second quarter, that sucker was over. Yeah, I did not stick around too long for that one.
I'm going to ask you I'm going to ask the same question that happens every time that he gets put out of the playoffs now. And then he comes back the next year and wins a championship. If this is it, and they lose against the Suns, is that LeBron's last time we'll see him in an NBA Finals last year? What is he now, 36? Not
36?
getting any younger.
Yeah, 36 years old.
Maybe.
He's been a physical freak his entire career. And look, that whole team has dealt with injuries this year. But could this be it? The official changing of the guard in the Western Conference?
Well, is he going to get Steph? He's trying to get Steph.
He's trying.
Who can they fleece for all their draft picks that they still really don't have? They've already traded away most of those to New Orleans.
Yeah, that's true.
I think there's a chance. But, I would say that this team still with AD healthy and everything, could still be right in there.
I agree. The problem is he's just never healthy. That guy gets hurt all the time. I think Charles Barkley referred to him last night as Anthony Street Clothes Davis because he's always in his street clothes.
It's pretty fitting. That even dates back to his days in New Orleans, too. That guy is never available.
Yeah. It's a problem.
I don't know. Could be. It could be. If so, he's had enough. He's
done fine.
He's done okay.
He's done fine. We'll see what happens. They're not out of it yet, although it looks pretty rough. What's your confidence level, Elijah, that the Lakers come back?
On a scale of 1 to 10, it's at a hard 3. If you can't make,
we'll see what happens on that front. Joe, I was driving around yesterday after our show was over, and it came out, I don't know, about 10, 15 minutes after our show, and Darren Donick and Chase talked about it, where UC Saros not nominated for the Vezina Trophy. The final nominations were Marc-Andre Fleury in Vegas, obviously Andre Vasilevsky in Tampa Bay, and Philip Grubauer with the Colorado Avalanche as well. I don't think anybody, Joe, was surprised by the first two. Fleury and Vasilevsky, they deserve to be nominated. In my opinion, Vasilevsky deserves to win. I think he will win. I think some people were a little taken aback by Grubauer being in there. I guess I was too. I think Saros deserves to be nominated. I thought he deserved to be nominated, especially, when you lead the league in most statistical categories from March 1st on, probably doing something right, especially in this season. But I'm not going to sit here and act like I was totally floored that he wasn't nominated. The GMs vote on this. A lot of times this gets up into, the best teams, the goalies on the best teams. And that's what happened with Philip Grubauer, I feel like. What do you think of UC Saros not being nominated for the Vezina Trophy?
No, I mean, I think it's a big miss. And I agree with you. I mean, I think he probably comes in third. I mean, look, I think he has a case for the award. I think you're right that Vasilevsky, and it's one of those things, too, where you're going through a playoff series where you're reminded why Vasilevsky should win, right? So, but that doesn't count in the voting.
No.
But still, I mean, no one should have any gripe with Vasilevsky winning the Vezina this year. But, yeah, I think it's a big miss. I mean, even with the bad start, Saros' final numbers absolutely put him in that category. And then that's not even taking into account how he carried the Preds. I mean, that to me is – I mean, I understand there are times when it's like, okay, you got a really good goalie on a great team and the best team. Okay, sometimes that wins out if like as a tiebreaker or something. But I would put value on goalies who have to do more.
I agree.
Philip Grubauer, I mean, it's been great for them that he has stabilized that position, and it's fine. I mean, he's good. But he does not have to do the heavy lifting that UC Saros does, not even close.
Well, and you brought up the point about, watching Vasilevsky in this series against Carolina. I mean, they're up 2-0 against the Hurricanes. And I would say of the 120 minutes that have been played, they've been dominated by Carolina for about 115 of them. I mean, they've just been totally torched. But Vasilevsky has been there, and he's answered the bell. And all of a sudden, Tampa Bay's going back home up 2-0, and it feels like the series is kind of over against Carolina. He's just been that good. On the flip side, you watch the playoffs right now, and you watch the Colorado Avalanche play. And good on Philip Grubauer. He's been fine. But he's not had to do a whole lot. Nathan MacKinnon is scoring about 3 a game out there right now. It's it paints a different picture out there. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's so I just, to me, if not taking that into account is a big mistake. I mean, that's just, I think it's inexcusable. It's interesting, too, when you talk about Carolina dominating, the play. So Sarah Sivian, our athletic Carolina beat writer, who I found out last night is actually a huge Creed fan, which still I'm a little bit shook by this.
Oh, it's awesome.
But anyway, this is her. She quoted Rod Brindamore after the game. Maybe you guys are watching a different game than I'm watching, but I don't feel like we're getting outmatched. So, press conferences.
That sound familiar?
Well, we love press conferences.
I watched his press conference last night. The line of questioning was not about them getting outmatched.
I don't know
where he got that
from.
That
was just him.
That was just him going.
Gotcha.
But
was that like, Joe? Is that you in there?
Yeah, Joe. Joe?
Who is this?
Is that Joe? Oh, my goodness.
What sport are we watching right now? Is this a basketball question?
These Zoom pressers can get interesting sometimes. But, yeah, I mean, here we are. You're up 2-0 if you're Tampa Bay. You had 15 shots on goal last night, and they have a chance to go back home and pull off the sweep. Now, I don't think they will. I think Carolina is going to if they end up playing the way that they played the first 2 games, they're going to win eventually, like you would think. So I still think you've got a chance to see a good series between Carolina and Tampa Bay. But this just goes to show you how much of a difference a goaltender can make this time of year. And that's why, heading into the Carolina series, you thought the Predators had a chance because they had what was the best goalie in the league the last half of the season. So I agree. I mean, I understand there were a lot of Predators fans yesterday that were frustrated. I certainly understand why. I would have had UC Saros as a finalist. I still don't think he would have won. I think Vasilevsky is the deserving winner. Look, Fleury played great all season long too. So you got to keep that into account when you start talking about this. But I understand the frustration from Predators fans of Saros not being nominated. And this goes back to, we've had some people say, the general managers and the players should just vote on everything and cut the media out of the award voting. And look, the media makes some stupid decisions sometimes too with things they nominate. But our buddy Brandon Walker had an interesting idea yesterday that I don't really disagree with, and that is just make every vote, every award vote, just cut it in thirds. GMs, players, media, every single one of them. I don't have much of a problem with that. That's fine with me.
That's fine. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all the groups are going to screw some things up. And there's different I think writers who cover like a pro league, I think usually they have pretty good feel for stuff like this. Here and there you get like the homer writer who like votes for like their player for MVP when everyone knows it's the one person who should.
It happens in Pittsburgh quite frequently.
Yeah. I mean,
the people trying to tell me this year that Sidney Crosby deserved MVP over Connor McDavid was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, you get some stuff like that, but for the most part, it's good. Now, like the college, and I've been this person, college beat writer voting in the AP poll. See, that is like you are totally focused on the team you cover.
Right.
You don't watch these other games on a Saturday. You cover your team. It's just like coaches, though, because their SIDs vote for them, and they don't care either. Like, so there's some voting things that are bad, but I think when you cover a league for a whole year and you vote for postseason awards, sorry, man, I think I trust the media more than anybody else. I'm sorry, other than the occasional outlier.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not that the GMs don't know way more about the sport, but
that's my thing. Like, how much? And Willie brought this up yesterday too. Like, how much is, especially this year with the divisions being what they were, how much is a general manager in Winnipeg paying attention to UC Soros this year? You don't ever have to play them. You're focused on your team
this year, especially.
You're in the middle of a playoff race. You're going up against the same 8 teams. Like, how much attention is our general managers around the league paying this year?
Right, they're paying attention to people who maybe they could acquire.
Right.
Yeah, and you don't even randomly see all the teams this year, so an especially bad year for it, but. Yeah, I think Grubauer's a passenger, and it's a hell of a ride. So congratulations, Philip.
Way to go, Philip.
And at some point, he's going to come into play if they actually make a run. But
look, and he was good.
He's very
year.
good.
He's
very
been
good.
fine.
But man, it helps when you got 4 on the board quick.
The other team never touches the puck until the third period when you're up by 5 goals. Usually in pretty good shape as a goaltender.
Yeah.
At that point,
We're a pitcher who's getting 5 runs an inning of support. You feel pretty good about things.
Generally in pretty good shape. We're off and running today here on Robby and Rexrode. Taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. When we come back, an interesting discussion yesterday on Darren, Donick, and Chase as to whether or not this Predators season is considered a success. What do you think? Is this Predators season a success? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Elijah Campbell here with you on this Wednesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Joe, it was an interesting conversation yesterday on Darren, Donick, and Chase, and it's a question that's been thrown around to me a couple of times. I know it's been thrown around to you a couple of times as well, trying to determine whether or not this past Predators season is considered a success. Now, look, I think you can take this a few different ways. You know, there were some people yesterday on DDC saying, you know, how could you consider anything a success when you don't win a championship? And look, I get the thinking behind that. That's also a heck of a bar when you start saying that every single season you don't win a championship is not a success. We all know there are varying degrees of success and different definitions that you can have as whether or not your team, whether or not your season was successful. All three of the guys on Darren, Donick, and Chase yesterday felt like this season was a success. Now, they didn't say, I mean, you know, it was an A. I think it's how Willie put it. It's not an A, but it's a success. I think Darren went as far to say, I don't know how you couldn't consider it a success. I'm not quite willing to go that far. I mean, I think there were parts of this season for the Predators that were successful. I think one part of the success where you eventually got to an identity that you wanted to get to, and that's something this Predators team, quite frankly, the couple years before that just didn't have. There was no identity with this group. So that part of it I consider a success. They bought into the coach's identity. They figured out that it worked down the stretch, and I think that served them well. But I think to sit here and act like, you know, a first-round exit in the playoffs and a albeit impressive run down the stretch of the regular season where you had to win 20 out of 28 just to get into the playoffs and just ignore the first part of the season, I'm not going to sit here and act like it's just absolutely a success for this Predators team. I think there are varying ways that you can take this. And, again, it's difficult for me to believe and for me to say that a first-round exit is just absolutely a success for this Predators team.
Yeah, I mean, I think we get mad at Jared sometimes, but I think we don't get mad at DDC too often. But no. I listen to that too, and I'm like, if this is a success to me, I mean, again, if it's pass fail, like Willie said, on the grade, maybe it's somewhere between a B and a C plus or whatever. But I mean, if it's pass fail, if it's one or the other, which is like that question gets asked every team season, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I went on Channel 2 with Emily Proud Sunday and was asked that exact question. I said, no, I don't think it's a success. I think if a success for this franchise is getting to the playoffs and losing the first round, then, I mean, that's quite a lowering of the bar. Is it a complete disaster? No. And Darren's points about the business aspect of it, I agree with. I mean, it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference to have 3 home playoff games and to just have the city kind of wrapped up in this for the time period it was wrapped up in it. It's an experience. I think people enjoyed this team. They found identity. They fought back. They found some things to take forward. But overall a success, I would say no. I would say had they won 2 more games, I probably would say yes. I would probably say, you know what, you beat that team. And then no matter what happened from there, that's a heck of a playoff series win, probably one of their better series wins, really, that the franchise would have had, given the quality of that team. And so I would say yes, but I mean, I think not winning that series, not that they were expected to, but like where do you draw the line? I say no. It's funny because I think it's a step forward from last year, but not a success, whereas the Titans season, I would argue, it was a step backward. I mean, they went from AFC Championship game to losing the first round. But I would say you could make a stronger case that the season was a success because you won the division, you had your best record in 12 years and stuff like that. I mean, I think that's a tougher argue either way. I think this one's pretty clear to me.
Yeah, it's interesting because I still, to me, the larger discussion with this group is still the overriding theme for me, and that is how close are you to winning a Stanley Cup? That's what this team is supposed to be about. And I realize with the way things have gone the last couple of years that those expectations have shifted. I mean, there's not one person that picked the Nashville Predators to win the Stanley Cup before the season started this year, so I fully recognize that. But to me, that's what your contracts say. That's the contracts that you've signed and the players that you have on this roster. You're supposed to be in a window where you're competing for a Stanley Cup. And this Predators team right now is not competing for a Stanley Cup. So, look, they could be close. I don't know. With the way UC Saros played, I think you feel a whole lot better about your chances as you move forward. A lot of people talked about when we originally started having a discussion about the window to win for this team and how long is the window going to last. A lot of that window revolved around Pecorine and the way that he was playing, just because you didn't know what you had in UC Saros after that. I think we know pretty well what they have right now, and it's a pretty good goalie, and he's going to give them a chance to win every night that he's out there, and they're going to have a chance to compete in the playoffs because he's just good. He's a really good goaltender at this point. So you feel great about that moving forward, and that goes back to, I think, how complicated this answer can be, because I think part of this season was trying to figure out what your goaltending looks like in the future. And about halfway through, that was a pretty major question for this team. Then he turns it around. He figures it out. Obviously, we know the run. We talked about it in the last segment that he went on down the stretch. He was awesome. I think you figured out your goaltending for the future for this team. So that part of it is successful as well. But if you're going to talk about that being a success, I think you've also got to talk about, all right, you still have Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene on your team, and you're paying them both $8 million a year, and they don't look any closer to being better for you now than they did this time a year ago. That's a huge problem, and it's very difficult to compete for a Stanley Cup that way when your two highest played forwards just aren't bringing you much offensively.
Right, and another part of the conversation was, obviously there's some people that are going to say, total failure, blow it up, fire everybody. But Chase was like, there's some people that are like Fire Hines crew that like that's all they care about, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not even sure if they won a Stanley Cup if they would change. I'm like, I think they would change on that, right?
I would hope so.
It was not. I mean, look, it was not that long ago that David Poile was the toast of the town. They had gotten the Stanley Cup final. I mean, and then the President's Trophy. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. Then there's moves along the way that have helped get them here. So yes, there's always going to be some people who are like, fire the whoever's in charge of whatever the team. But I think most people are reacting to the information and how things have gone. So maybe, look, if it is a success to me, then I've missed the part where the bar has gone from here to here.
Right.
And maybe I've missed it. If that's what it is now, and we're just back to find some way to get into the playoffs and lose in the first round, and that's a success, well, okay.
Do you think the format of this season might have changed that a little bit? Because, I mean, you're not usually playing Carolina and Tampa and, I guess, Dallas 8 times a year.
Sure.
This year was a little different in that aspect where you're probably going to be in an easier division, next year when things kind of go back to normal.
You sure?
I think
little Minnesota action? Little Colorado action?
Colorado, obviously, but Minnesota, we'll see after this year. They're young. They had a really good year this year, but Calgary's done similar things like that where they had a really good team, give a team all they could handle in the first round of the playoffs, and then never reach that again. So we'll see what Minnesota is. But, I mean, St. Louis,
they're solid. Yeah,
very
St.
good.
Louis is, they're sort of.
I mean, you don't have to play the Lightning and the Hurricanes 8 times again next year, or the Panthers 8 times next year. I think that has something to do with it as well this year. I mean, who knows what it's like if this team made this run in a normal Western Conference. But do you guys think that has anything to do with it as well?
Okay, so you got 56 games. So like you said, you got those 3 teams absolutely very tough. So I'll give you those. So there's 24. So there's 24 of your 56 games.
There's your bad starts.
Okay, but so what percentage of 82 is hard? I mean, I'd have to go through it. I mean, but there's a lot of fluff in this schedule when you get the Red Wings 8 times, right? When you get the Blackhawks 8 times?
And they took advantage of it. I mean, obviously the gap between the Red Wings and Blackhawks and Predators was pretty steep because high. It wasn't like the Predators were split in a lot of those series either.
And Dallas just frankly was not good this year. I mean, they were hurt. That was I think a big part of it. They were very disappointing. That actually would be an interesting thing to look at. Like what percentage of your schedule is fluff in an 82 where you obviously play everybody, you play the East once each, once home, once away. I don't know. That's because you're right. Like it's condensed with three very good teams that were hard to beat in the standings. But that division was so like top heavy and bottom heavy. You know?
I mean, let's be honest too. This sport, it's just difficult to figure out how close you are in this sport. I mean, they were talking yesterday. You're a couple of bounces away from beating Carolina and moving on and playing against Tampa Bay in the series, which is absolutely true. I mean, they were a couple of bounces away from winning that series. I mean, you close it down in Game 5. Who knows what happens in Game 6? You're really close to winning that series. You're also 2 bounces away in overtime at home from getting swept in that series. I mean, that's what it is in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's a razor's edge. I mean, it's the difference between moving on and not moving on in most series is not that much. And that's why I think it's so difficult in this sport, maybe more so than any other sport, to determine exactly where you are and how close you are to being a Stanley Cup contender.
Well, and especially if you're going to use the playoffs as a guide, because, again, 2 years ago, the best team in the sport got bounced in the first round, and this happens quite a bit, right? I mean, there's always something that happens. I mean, Toronto is a much better team than Montreal. Well,
yes.
One of them's still playing, one of them isn't. Not the better team. I mean, so you have to base it on – I think that's why the regular season is important. It kind of tells you – I mean, to me, the 17-18 regular season helped validate the run. It was like, okay, these guys – you could always say, some magical run, Pecorine and all this stuff, and Pontus Aberg and Aberg is scoring big goals. But they validated it with the President's Trophy run. I mean, since then, the regular season, to me, has also told the story, along with the postseason, of a bad trend, of things going the wrong way. But, yes, I mean, you're right. It is close. It could have gone either way. They could have made a run. They could have been swept out of this thing. The whole cliche about getting into the tournament is true, and they did. And, I mean, they deserve credit for that because it took a lot to get there. But, like you said, you still have to factor in everything about this season.
When we come back, we'll continue this discussion on the Predators. Do you consider this season a success? Let us know, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025 on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. That's next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Taylor from Fort Campbell texting in. I'm getting ready to go out and stand in the rain for an hour and a half on road guard. That's Army life. Just wanted to say I appreciate y'all's show in the morning to get me going. I'll be listening on the app while out there. Taylor, thank you. We appreciate you. Appreciate your service.
Appreciate you, Taylor.
Absolutely. Right now, taking your thoughts on the Predators. And was this season considered a success for the Predators? We've had varying degrees of opinions so far. Ron on the text line says, anything less than a Stanley Cup is a failed season. The goal is a championship. It doesn't mean you didn't have good moments and also a stretch or down the stretch making a good run, but the end of the season is just okay if you don't win.
All right, Ron. So, 2017, you probably doubled your fan base. You had some of the most incredible scenes like in this country's sports history. I'm absolutely going to jump into the hyperbole on that. Find me scenes better than like what we saw downtown. You got within 2 wins of winning the Stanley Cup. You way exceeded expectations. That wasn't a success. Come on, Ron. I mean, you said in the break, Robby, you're an expansion team making the postseason for the first time. That's not a success. You win your first playoff series. That's not a success. Come on. I mean, it's fine. Some people just draw a line. Did you win a championship or no? And then if that's your pass-fail, that's your pass-fail.
Look,
but I don't think you're quite looking at things with enough nuance.
And I hear you. I mean, look, you'll see players and coaches say that all the time. We have one goal, and that's to win a championship.
Sure,
and
sure.
There's one team that's happy at the end of the season. Well, that's great. But if that was the bar for everyone, people would be getting fired every year.
Yeah.
So
they get fired quickly enough. Imagine the firings now, especially in the NHL. NHL coaches,
oh, my goodness. It's a revolving door.
Yeah. we don't have enough to recycle at this point for all the firings that would happen.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. David texting in. That mighty Carolina team that we got credit for playing tough has scored 2 goals in 2 games and may get swept by Tampa Bay. He is correct. They've scored 2 goals in 2 games. They've been the better team, 5-1-5 so far. They just have. Vasilevsky is that good. I don't know what to tell you. He's that good, and it's been that good so far.
It's weird, too, because, like, randomly Florida will put 6 on them, Yeah. But I mean, for the most part, man, guy is it's just unfair that he's the goalie for that team.
Yeah. It's weird how Florida was the only team that really figured him out like that all year long, because the last 2 games of the season, in order to get home ice advantage, Florida tattooed Vasilevsky. No one did that to him all year long. It seems seemingly it's only the Florida Panthers that were able to put anything on him.
In-state rivals.
That's right.
But, yeah, look, and that's the thing, too. This happens also with the teams. It's kind of like some people felt a little better about Tennessee men's basketball because Oregon State looked good after that. If Carolina turns us around, you'll maybe some will feel better about losing that team.
Yeah.
But you'll hear more comments like this if they just get smoked out of the playoffs by the Lightning. Tough deal for those 2 teams to be playing in this round. Tough
yes, it is.
Tough setup. Meanwhile, we get a little Winnipeg Montreal. Yay!
Looking forward to that coming up. Matter of fact, I wonder what yesterday was like in Toronto. I bet that was something.
Well, speaking of, we're doing a lot of retrospective on DDC. They had a caller from Toronto, which was pretty funny.
Oh, I heard that.
Yeah, good stuff. Like a Preds fan, I guess, from Toronto, but he's Canadian. And
the tears are just washing through Toronto.
Yeah, the flood of tears. Yeah.
Jordan on the text line says the effort this year in the playoffs was refreshing, unlike previous years, so you can call it a success.
Okay.
Look, I'll say this, and that goes back to the identity part of this discussion. I think they absolutely found an identity. Well, now the challenge is playing with that more often and getting back to that to begin next season. It's also getting your top players to play that way, because if they don't, at the end of the day, do you really have an identity if your top players don't play that way? That would be my question as you move forward here if you're the Predators. But I don't think there's any doubt about it. You look at this playoff series against Carolina. Carolina is the better team. They were the more talented team. At the end of the day, they ended up winning the series. But the Predators, they had a certain style they wanted to play. I thought for the most part they played it. It just, at the end of the day, it wasn't good enough to beat Carolina. So to Jordan's point, I do think you came out of this series against Carolina. I mean, you felt a whole lot better about that than you did against Arizona. That's for sure.
Although, hey, after Arizona, a lot of happy comments.
There were
about how well they played.
Yeah, there was some of that.
That's something
that went over well.
I mean, well, yeah, and that's something that you gotta read the room better than that. But that's a separate issue. It'd be interesting to poll the team on this. I guess, hey, there's some players available today.
Yeah.
Maybe you should get on the Zoom call and ask each one of them that exact question.
Maybe I should.
Was this season a success? And you're right. Like the stock answer on that is, do we win a championship or not? Yeah. But to me, like if this season was a success, then you gotta let me know when things change so much. I know that the trend has been down, but like you said, this has been the expectation has still been, can you compete at the highest level?
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ron responding to Joe saying, so you're saying 4 Super Bowl appearances and no trophies are great seasons, talking about the Bills, right? Of course not. Fans will get tired of just good seasons. They want championships or moves to get there, but still a championship in the end.
Okay, so we're going to bring in the Buffalo Bills. Well, yeah, those are great seasons, Ron. They got to the Super Bowl. Now, by the time you got to loss 3 and 4, were Bills fans agonizing? Yeah, I mean, I actually lived with one, like, because I was, my college roommate, and it got to the point where it was like, okay, I don't even want to make these anymore. But are they successful seasons? Yes. Every other team in the league would have killed to be in that spot. I mean, yeah, I mean, we're always going to know the Buffalo Bills for losing those games, but we could also talk about like the 4-12 Detroit Lions from that year, if you like. Yes, those were successful seasons.
I would agree. Successful seasons. Now, I hear Ron's point. Like, eventually you want to break through. That's why you play the game.
Sure you do.
And that's obviously, I think everybody knows that. But you can have a successful season without just winning a championship.
Yes. You can.
Unless you're like the LeBron 2011 Miami Heat. And then you can't. With Bosh and Wade.
Yeah. Right. Well,
there are certain teams.
Well, it's all relative to your expectations.
Exactly.
So that was absolutely championship or bust. You better win it. I mean, the thing is, even with the Bills, for example, in those seasons, by the time they got to the last 2, the Cowboys were the clear best team.
Yeah.
I mean, it was already going to be a big upset. Now, they should have won the first one. Scott Norwood wide right. I'm sorry, Bills fans.
Sorry, Scott.
I'm sorry, Pete Weber, if you're listening. But so that team I think was the best team in the NFL that year. Should have won it. But actually, the Cowboys were the clear best team. Sometimes there's a clear best team. The Preds were not the clear best team in 2017. They were an 8 seed. They were the 16th seed in the whole playoffs.
Right.
That was a wild success. That was a magnificent, out of this world success.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a text that says, Preds need to compete with the upper-level teams for the season to be a success. And I agree with that. I mean,
you could say they did. You could say they did in this series.
Well, I guess. But I take kind of the whole season into account. That record against the upper-level teams in the season, not very good. So that's something that's where you're supposed to be with this franchise, with the contracts you sign. That's what I keep going back to is you're supposed to be in a window right now where you're competing for championships. And right now, it does not feel like this team is competing for championship.
No.
Now, can you fix that this offseason?
And I should correct myself because I said, when did I not notice the bar is lowered? Of course, we all know the bar is lowered. But to me, I would have set it at this year, you win a playoff series. That's if they had beaten Carolina and then got swept by Tampa Bay, I'd say, how do you not call it a success?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd still be their first playoff series win in 3 years. It's an upward bump after going one way. Now, you could still say, I still think it is a little bit, but not enough for me to use the S word.
Especially because they actually got in the playoffs this year.
Oh. See, whatever it suits your purposes last year doesn't count as a playoff.
That's right.
Was that the playoffs last year, Elijah?
Man. Playoff light. I guess.
Playoff light.
Yeah.
That's probably a good way to put it.
But you can't. Again, it's just like success or no. It's pass fail. It's yes or no.
No, that does not count.
Perfect. I like
Yes,
it.
it does. They everything that you talked to the show. Oh, their playoff streak. Well, wait a minute. What do you mean their playoff streak? They have
If
a
it
playoff
was up
streak.
to me, it wouldn't be there. But it's not up to me.
Well, officially it is.
I know.
So you're wrong and you're wrong.
Thank you.
I'm
There you
never
go.
wrong, Joe.
To introduce our poll question of the day at 1025 The Game on Twitter, should the Preds fans consider this season a success? So far, 50% say yes, 50% say no. So we are right down the middle so far in the voting. It's going to be a good poll question. Well done, Elijah Campbell. We'll see what the end result of that looks like a little bit later in the show. When we come back, speaking of the Predators, going to hear from some Predators players today, including a very prominent Predators player, hopefully. What do we want to hear the Predators say after this season, after this series against Carolina? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Elijah Campbell here with you on this Wednesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. ESPN 94.9 is the home for Nashville Sounds baseball. Tonight, the Sounds are on the road to face the Charlotte Knights, the AAA affiliate of the Chicago White Sox. Pre-game show with Jeff Hem starts at 5:50, and the first pitch is at 6:04 p.m. Nashville Sounds baseball on ESPN 94.9, presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans and by 312 Pizza Company as well. Nashville Sounds been playing some good baseball as of late as well, so make sure that you're tuned in for that. Right now, talking Nashville Predators hockey, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Our friend JD texting in, I'm happy but not satisfied with the Preds' success. I'm no hockey purist as I'm still somewhat new to the sport. Watching the playoff series, it just looked like the Canes' big players were better than our big players. I liked what I saw after Hines moved Duchesne up to the first line. However, as hard as they skated and as hard as they played, Stahl and Aho just looked like they were on a different level. I like the younger guys and the energy they brought to the lineup, and I think that's something the Preds can build on going forward. I also think they're going to have to address some of the secondary players going forward as well. They need better players than Harper or Goodbranson. What do you think of that from JD? That, you like what Hines did, bringing Duchesne up to the first line, but at the end of the day, it just looked like Carolina's top players were better than the Predators' top players.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. Meanwhile, Ron's mad at me on the text line. Ron and I are going back and forth on the text line.
I'm glad. Somebody's got to call you out.
That's right. Ron asked me, was the Titans season a success?
Was it?
I think we had these segments.
I think we had this exact segment.
Yeah, we can go back. We can go back to January, like the week after they lost to the Ravens, and I think I said no then too. I think you can make a stronger case for them to have had a successful season because, again, they won their first division in 12 years. They had their best record in 12 years. Yeah, I mean it's kind of the reverse of the year before, kind of this weird regular season that they salvage, then they make this run. Versus a pretty good regular season leads to a playoff loss. I also think last year was harder to view as a success for the Titans because it was a very angst-ridden 11-5 because of the defense.
Yes, because the defense was atrocious.
Now, you can counter that and say, well, did you not enjoy the best offense in Titans history? True. It's like if your defense would have just been okay, imagine what that team would have done. So I think it's harder to look at it like a success because of that too.
So we talked about last year with the Predators in that quote-unquote playoff series against Arizona and the mood afterwards. You lose in 4 games to the Coyotes. You felt like you played okay, I guess. I mean, you didn't score as much as you should have, and the top line, they had their moments where they generated some offense. But it's still last year. It had been trending one way, and you go out and you lose in a qualifying round to the Arizona Coyotes. It's very difficult to be positive after that, I think, if you're a Predators fan. And then you heard some of the comments from players after that series talking about how well they played and that they were the better team in that series, and the bounces just didn't go their way, which I just thought at the time was incredibly tone-deaf from the players in the organization from the Predators. Fast forward to this year, everything that we've seen, rock bottom halfway through, the run to get into the playoffs, and then the series against Carolina. There will be some Predators players available to the media today and talking for the first time since the series has ended against Carolina. Joe Rexrode, as you look at the players that will be talking today, and we'll see exactly who they are as we move forward here, what do you want to hear out of this Predators group today, this leadership group, as they kind of digest what just happened to them against Carolina and as they move forward here into the offseason?
I mean, I can't give you a good answer on that. I'd like to hear, honesty and some detailed comments on things. But, I mean, I guess anything but what you just said. Like, it was an amazing year. And, I mean, look, they can be happy with how – I think Ryan Ellis had a good quote after the loss. The Predator lost the Predator way. I mean, it's an interesting way to put it. And I think it's fair – for them to look at how they did. He talks about work ethic a lot. Some of those other guys do too, and say, yeah, they found that. They should feel good about that. But I guess one thing I wouldn't want to hear, which was something that, by the way, when you talk about successful seasons, go back 3 years, even after losing in the second round. I know when they came out and said that they basically campaigned to David Poile to keep the crew together. I mean, I was like, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it makes sense to do that, and they basically did. I don't think there's much. I mean, at this point, this team has got to get better. There's still things that you got to improve. Maybe it's in the room. Maybe they believe it's in the room. But if it's in the room, there's some guys in that room who have to really turn things around, and it just doesn't. It doesn't really add up that they can get to where they want to get by just trudging forward with this.
Well, look, if it's in the room, it should have been out on the ice by this point. I mean, you've lost all benefit of the doubt to say that it's in the room. To me, like I said, there are a lot of things that you can be happy about. The young players, I think you're excited about moving forward. But I think if you're a part of this core group today and you start coming out with, hey, we believe this is in the room comments, I mean, come on. You've had the last 3 years to prove that, and you've not done it. So at this point, it's on you. Like, you've not proven it, and if David Poile makes changes to the core group, which I believe he should this offseason, I don't know how you argue against that at this point.
Right. So, so I don't know that there's anything that's going to be all that satisfying for them. Obviously, a big part of today is, what does Pekka Rinne say? Do you think Pekka Rinne is going to, break news
I don't know.
on his future?
I don't know. I'm interested to see what he talks about today. I would doubt it. I would say what we're probably going to hear, if Pekka Rinne talks today, is I'm going to take some time, I'm going to make a decision, and we'll see what happens, but I've not made a decision yet. That's my guess as to what we'll hear today. But, I mean, I guess there is a possibility that he could just come out today and be like, yep, this is it. I knew it was it after that last regular season game. Didn't want to say anything, but I'm retiring.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. But he's the type of guy, it's possible. It's possible. Speaking of Predators saying things, we should give a nod to Mark Borowiecki, by the way.
Yep.
If anybody didn't see his Instagram post, I mean, Vingan tweeted, a lot of people have tweeted, I retweeted yesterday, but he talked about concussions this year, but also mental health issues he's had and, trying to be a better parent and things like that. And so good for him for sharing that. And it's just another one of those things. Even in regular times, you don't know what people are going through, really. You don't know them, really. But especially in the last year plus.
Yeah.
I mean, just no contact at all, really, with people other than these random Zooms. So, but good for him for sharing that. I think every time someone with that platform, with that kind of visibility, professional athlete, shares something like that, I think it's a good thing, and someone out there gets helped by it.
Yeah, absolutely, and powerful stuff yesterday from Mark Borowiecki. He put that on his Instagram that you can check out. Some interesting comments, some great comments yesterday about his struggles with concussions coming down the stretch and dealing with OCD as well. So really good courage by Mark Borowiecki to put that on display, and said at the end of it, now his goal is to come back next year and be ready to go in training camp for the Predators. And, given his injury situation down the stretch, he's kind of a guy that you just forgot about and got lost in the shuffle because he wasn't available to play. But he is under contract next year. He has one more year left on his deal. So you start talking about the back end of this room on defense with Ferentz coming in there. You've got Jeremy Davies. Maybe he has a role next year as well. Mark Borowiecki. I mean, there's some a logjam back there on the back part of that defense that you're going to have to sort through and figure out if you're David Poile and the Predators this offseason.
Yeah, no question. I mean, again, it's good to have depth.
Yeah.
And they do have depth, and they've built up some depth. It's just you got to know who your top players are. And really, the next time they're in a playoff series, really you want it to be easier for John Hines, to put his lineup together.
Yeah.
You'd prefer to have some more defined roles and some guys who emerge and say, this is my spot. So the defense corps is going to be really interesting. It's all going to be interesting next year.
When we come back, we will switch gears and dive into the Julio Jones situation. How soon could Julio be moved? And if you're the Titans, what's your best offer for Julio Jones. We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Hour number 2 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Elijah Campbell here with you on this Wednesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. We got a lot to get to today here on the show. Tony Vitello, Tennessee baseball coach, will join us at 7:45, hosting an NCAA regional, I believe for the first time since 2005.
Yes, that is correct.
Been a heck of a year for the Tennessee Vols baseball team, number 3 nationally heading into this tournament. So we'll have that conversation later this hour coming up with Tony Vitello. Should be a fun one with him. He's done a great job with the Vols baseball team this year. Right now, though, talking Julio Jones, and still no movement on Julio Jones from the Falcons. I guess at this point, Joe, it could come at any minute, any second, any day now here from the Atlanta Falcons to whoever he's going to get traded to.
Or not.
Or not.
It could be sit there.
Dragging on forever.
Yeah, it could just sit there, and then we'll know. First of all, I'm going to have increasing doubts about this first-round pick that they supposedly are mulling over.
Yes.
And it'll just be a stalemate. But I got to think with so many interested suitors that someone's going to come through here pretty soon.
You would think. And they, and Jared pointed this out too, they don't have a lot of cap space right now. Like, they've eventually got to get all their rookies signed as well. So you would think there would be at least some urgency from the Falcons' point of view to get this done as well. So let's say that this is coming down to the line, and Jared was talking about this yesterday on the show as well, and I texted him my final offer, and he made fun of it on the air. We'll see if you make fun of it as well. What would be your best offer? If you're the Titans and you're looking at this Julio Jones situation, you feel like he is somebody that could come into your offense and be the difference in taking you over the top and maybe winning a Super Bowl. What is your best offer if you're John Robinson and the Titans and trying to acquire the services of Julio Jones from the Falcons?
Well, I guess I would say the centerpiece of my best offer would be a second-round pick. So I could also – look, I could make the case to do, the Rashaan Evans and a second deal, but that's still – look, for as much as Rashaan Evans struggled last year at times, you're still taking away your inside linebacker depth. You're taking away a guy who in some situations is still really good and a guy who could have a bounce-back year and be really important starting linebacker for you. So I'd still rather not do that. I'd rather not chip away at this defense I'm trying to fix, if at all possible. So, if you're asking me what the absolute limit I would do, maybe it would be something like that. But I would say, here's a second-round pick, and we'll take on that salary, and really, it's a pretty sweet deal for you.
That's exactly what I said. And Jared said if he was the owner of the Titans and I put that offer out there, that he would fire me. That's the general manager.
That the second-round pick is too much.
The second-round pick and taking on the whole salary.
Yeah. And it is a lot. I don't know that I'd fire you.
Thank you.
Yes. I'd let you hang around a little bit, clean up around the office. That to me is, look, if you really want to get in this, I think you're going to have to do something like that.
That's kind of the crux of my argument. Do you want Julio Jones or do you not? If you want Julio Jones, you're going to have to give up something you don't want to give up.
Right. Now, I've heard people say, my offer is, that's what Willie said, my offer is nothing. I'll take on the salary. Yeah, okay, I get it, but you're not going to get him.
Right.
And I think there are enough teams out there who could really benefit from Julio, if Julio is still Julio, that I just don't think you're going to come in there and just throw a bag of footballs at him and get him back because you're taking on a salary. I don't think that's realistic. If it was A.J. Green, okay, then that's a different story. But this is still a guy who could be one of the elite players in the league next year.
Well, it's interesting, too, and, Charles talked about this yesterday on the show, Charles Robinson, who joins us every Tuesday at 9 o'clock here on Robby and Rexrode. Like, his cap hit next year, his salary, is not that high for an elite-level wide receiver. Now, the question then is Julio Jones still an elite-level wide receiver? Like, is that what you're getting back from the Falcons at 32 years old? And as Charles pointed out yesterday, not just 32 years old, basically 32 years old and 7 months at that point when the season begins. So you're almost 33 at that point if you're Julio Jones. So, we've said this many times. I don't think anybody is under the illusion that you're getting the Julio Jones from 2015 back if you're the Titans. But if it's Julio Jones that before he got hurt last year, still putting up some pretty good numbers, like if he can stay healthy and you're getting a guy that gives you, 70, 75 catches for 1,100 or 1,200 yards, is that not worth the second-round pick with this team, this group right now that's in a window to win with this core on offense? I think so.
No, I do too. It's interesting, and especially Jared is very. And look, Floyd and Jared were against the Clowney go for it move, the rollover cap, and It looks bad now. I look at that situation kind of like this situation. And if you're not going for it, I mean, look, you don't want to strap yourself 3 years down the road. You don't want to be in trouble. But it's hard to go for it if you aren't. Now, there are teams that have quarterbacks on rookie deals, and they have a much better situation. And we saw the Seahawks win one and get to one with Russell Wilson on his rookie deal, right? And, like, you have a lot more flexibility. But typically, if you have a quarterback who's making any kind of money, and Tannehill's deal still looks good compared to a lot of guys, you got to take some gambles usually to try to make this stuff happen. I mean, I just feel like if you are like, we'd rather be 10-7 and just be solid and not be in big trouble down the road. I mean, what are the Titans going to be when Henry and Tannehill time is over, which isn't too far down the road? I mean, do you think you're just going to continue? You're just going to stay at that? I mean, it's ups and downs. It's cyclical in this league, and there's plenty of teams. I mean, Jared had the example of Jaguars. They went for it. Yeah, well, I don't blame them for going for it. The problem for them is that Blake Bortles had one good playoff, and they didn't have a good quarterback.
Yeah.
And then they also had like a dysfunctional locker room. But for all the teams that fail going for it, I still don't think that means you shouldn't go for it. I don't think that's a reason to not go for it.
Well, I don't think so either. Like, eventually you got to go for it, try to win a Super Bowl.
What is the point? Now, to this, and this is a little bit. Now, Ron's going to hear this and say, "Wait a minute! I thought you said it's not just the championship." But the point is to try to win a championship. So, if you have something that is within reason that you can do to push yourself closer to that, I think it's. I mean, I think if you're John Robinson and you don't try, I know if I were a Titans fan, I'd be mad at him for not trying, and I don't see how this situation is some non-starters because you might be in cap trouble a few years down the road. A few years down the road, you're also going to have to find a quarterback. Maybe it's good to go 1-15 like the Jags just did, so you can get Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, I mean, like
also the cap's going to go up.
The cap, yeah, sure, the cap's going to go. Yeah, it's not like it's an absolute disaster. Like you're guaranteed to be in cap hell because you do this one thing. I don't think that's true. Now, there's tough decisions, but there's going to be tough decisions anyway.
Yeah. At DJATL92 on Periscope says, a second-round pick and Harold Landry or Jeffrey Simmons would be his best offer.
Jeez. Okay.
Now, he also has...
The Falcons love you.
Also had, I mean, his name is DJATL92, and there's a picture of Julio Jones on his profile.
And maybe throw in a little Derrick Henry for good measure.
He also says nobody wants Evans to sit on the bench, so stop it. So no Rashaan Evans.
Yeah.
Poo-pooing your Rashaan Evans idea.
Well, I mean, seriously, Rashaan Evans is, like, I swear, like, Nashville has just moved on from him, but he's still an important guy this year for this team.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't want to trade him out of the Titans. I mean, you'd be looking at, David Long and Jayon Brown and the rookie Monty Rice. Right now you have good depth. And, again, I'm not convinced that Rashaan Evans, like, can't be a good player. I think we saw a lot of signs of him becoming one in 19. So, but no, Atlanta, you're not getting Jeffrey Simmons in a second.
We'll continue the discussion on Julio Jones when we come back. We want your best offer, if you're the Titans, to the Falcons for Julio Jones. What would that be? Let us know on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. 1025 The Game and T-Mobile have partnered up to give you a chance to experience a Nashville SC game this season. Tune in every Monday to Darren, Donick, and Chase for the keyword to text in to win. Good luck from 1025 The Game, T-Mobile, and Nashville SC. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Join Stars for their annual golf tournament, the Hart Golf Classic, on Monday, June 14th at Vanderbilt Legends Club. This event pulls together some of our community's most influential leaders and business people, so consider sponsoring a hole and have your investment in the hope, health, and connection of our young people be showcased. Registration to play is still available. The tournament is a scramble format with an 8 a.m. shotgun start. Breakfast and lunch will be provided. It's the Hart Golf Classic for Stars Nashville on Monday, June 14th at Vanderbilt Legends Club. For more information, please visit starsnashville.org or call 615-983-6805. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. What's your best offer if you're John Robinson and the Titans for the services of Julio Jones? Ben on the text line says, I'll assume for his sake J-Rob already has different possible restructures lined up. It's his job. So then I'll offer to take $11 million of the contract and a fourth rounder in exchange for a second rounder in 2022. The restructured discussions might have already happened dozens of times since February. Unannounced deals could already be negotiated. What do you think of that coming from Ben, that maybe J-Rob already has some restructured deals potentially on the table?
Well, I'm sure that J-Rob, and again, Vin Marino is the guy who, he's in charge of, he's the cap guy, so to speak, for lack of a better term, for the Titans. I'm sure that they've explored various possibilities, and probably every year they have in mind, this or that could be done. I don't know that. I don't. If the suggestion is like they've made a deal and it's kept quiet, I don't think that's happened. It'll come out if there's a contract redone. But certainly, I would say the discussions and the preparations for that would have been thorough by now.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that says a first-round pick for Julio because Robinson can't draft in the first round. Also says he would trade Jared Stillman.
I love that one. So he had a terrible first-round pick, obviously, a year ago. So now don't pick in the first round anymore. So then fire him.
Just done. I was about to say, like, if you get to the point where you're convinced your general manager can't draft in the first round anymore, like, what are you doing? There's no point in having him there.
Just move on then.
It's been a rough go. But look, it's not like it's been just total disaster after disaster in the first round either. I mean, Jeffrey Simmons is looking pretty good.
Yeah, Jeffrey Simmons.
Say what you will about Adoree Jackson and Corey Davis not making their second contract here. And that's a problem. Like, you eventually have to start getting players that make their second contract here. But it's not like they were just total duds either.
No, and they picked up the option on Adoree, and then they cut him.
Yeah.
It was close with Corey Davis. Jack Conklin was good enough to have his second deal here. It was a good pick. They didn't get him. They didn't give an offer that he liked better than Cleveland's offer. So he went to Cleveland. So it has not been, Rashaan Evans certainly is right now. Looks okay, but not great. So it hasn't been great, but it hasn't been like the last pick will stand alone when it's all done. By the way,
hopefully.
let me just, so I can be accurate here. Vin Marino is the VP of football administration.
There you go.
But he is the capology expert here that gets all these things worked out to make the money work.
Mark from Clarksville on the text line says, I agree with you guys. Evans in a second is the most I would give. Maybe long if they were more interested in him because of last season. This move has to happen if you want to go for it in the next 2 years. So Mark, a big proponent of bringing Julio Jones here to Nashville.
I think if you can make it work, it's great. I think you have to try. The idea, I don't know that this pushes you over the top. I don't know. Of course, we don't know anything. You know, there's never an assurance with any move that it's going to work. That's another thing to talk about. Well, do we know this is going to make the no, but I think it improves their chances. I like their chances of going into Kansas City and scoring a 41-38 win better with Julio Jones on the team than not on the team. I don't like their defense's chances of getting a lot of stops in that game regardless. All the stuff they've done, still don't like their chances. Don't like anyone's chances.
But hey, Caleb Farley's not afraid of Tyreek Hill.
That's right. Press him all day, and it'll be fine. Look, if you're the Bucs and you have that kind of a dominant front/pass rush, even including inside linebackers too, like the whole deal, well, we saw what happens against a banged-up offensive line. But for the most part, you're going to have to outscore that team. And that's what you're looking at. You're trying to get out of the AFC, you're looking at them. What do you need to do? I would not hesitate to add add a great offensive player if I could do it. I still think they need to improve tight end for sure. They need to find a kicker too. So if they end up not getting Julio and they get a good tight end and they figure out kicker, they could still be a contender.
Sure.
But are their chances not better with Julio?
You would think so.
Is that not what matters?
Heidi from Dixon texting in saying, take half the contract this year, all of it next year, and trade him a third rounder to get Julio Jones. So half the contract coming back to the Titans this year, paying all of it next year, and a third-round pick sent to Atlanta as well is Heidi's best offer.
Okay. I don't think Atlanta's gonna go halvesies this year on the
Probably not
on the cap hit, but that's a pretty stingy offer, Heidi.
Ryan in Nashville says Rashaan Evans, a third-rounder this year and a second-rounder next year.
Jeez,
That'd probably get it done.
yeah, that's two real prominent picks there,
Yeah, it
plus
is.
a starter. That's too much. You're not stingy enough.
It's been all over the map so far on the text line. Ron texting in. It's all worth the gamble because we're around the corner from rebuilding mode. I'm going to send Ben Jones packing, and I'm going to trade Evans so I can make a little cap room, and then I'm going to offer 2 second-round picks this year's and 2023 second-rounders as well. They're just throwing those picks out there right now.
Gee whiz. Yeah, hold on to those second-rounders, man. If we're going to talk about J-Rob in the first round, second round's
It's pretty good in the
been
second
all right.
round.
Take out Kevin Dodd, but
Well, there is that.
yeah, there is that. I'm down for trading Jared straight up for Julio as well.
So how about this? This coming from Matt from the Borough. Atlanta receives Evans, Jenkins, a Tennessee second-rounder in 2022, and a fourth-rounder in 2023. And the Titans receive Julio and Hayden Hurst. Atlanta retains 1/4 of Julio's salary.
Oh, my gosh. Let's just trade half the team to each other. I love it.
Why don't we just swap full teams?
Sure.
Well, it's funny, though, because,
Can they get Dean Pease back?
And Arthur Smith.
Hey, maybe so. Well, it's funny. We started this conversation in the offseason talking about could the Titans trade with Atlanta for Hayden Hurst? You're getting Kyle Pitts in there now. Look, we know what sort of a factor Kyle Pitts is going to be in that offense. Hayden Hurst makes a lot of sense for the Titans. Matt saying 2 birds with 1 stone. Julio Jones and Hayden Hurst.
Okay, so that's two second-rounders.
Now, 1 second-rounder and a fourth-rounder in 2023, and they get Evans and Jenkins as well.
Okay. So you're trading – you're definitely – your offense, you're feeling great about your offense. Now your defense that you've worked so hard to improve, you just shipped away a starting corner. And I've thrown out Jenkins too because they are looking for corners and starting linebacker. I don't know, man.
Got to have a lot of confidence in Caleb Farley.
That offense would be pretty good, though.
It would be. They'd need to be.
Yeah, Caleb Farley, Elijah Molden, Christian Fulton. You're up.
Clay from Cunningham saying he's down for trading Jared straight up for Julio as well.
Yeah. I think that would be Jared would be fine with that too,
I think
right?
Jared probably would be fine with that.
Who?
Danny on the text line says a third-rounder this year, a sixth-rounder next year. Give us Julio and Dean Pease, please.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Bring Dean Pease back in there.
Dean Pease back into the trade talks.
Hey, it's going to be interesting to see what this looks like, and that's why I said yesterday, I know some people, if I offered up a second-round pick and to take on the entire salary, some people just scoff at that. But to me, with as many people as I think could be interested in Julio Jones, that may be what it takes. I don't know what the price is going to be. I still have a hard time believing it's going to be a first-rounder. But you may have to take the entire salary if you want Julio Jones.
Yeah, I bet this is where I do think that, if the Tannehill restructure idea is enough, then I think that's doable. But I do think that if you can send someone back to them, that they would be happy having a player back, and you're slicing into that salary, you're sending a little bit back. That would be ideal. There's just not Rashad Evans is the obvious name.
Right.
I don't think the Titans want to lose him. this year. I mean, this year he is playing for his future. This is a contract year, Rashaan Evans. Bet you Rashaan Evans puts his best foot forward this year, and probably improves. And they've really done a lot to try to fix that defense.
Our buddy Rick on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, text in, says, maybe Joe's knows the answer to this. Is there anyone on defense that Dean Pease was in love with? Hopefully Rashaan Evans, or maybe someone Arthur Smith was in love with, like Darrington Evans. I mean, I'm sure Dean Pease enjoyed coaching Rashaan Evans, especially because, the last time Dean Pease saw Rashaan Evans as a coach, he's making a pretty good place for this defense in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, and so was David Long.
Yeah.
And David Long coming in for Jayon Brown. I think he was a big fan of Jayon Brown. I mean, coaches like playmakers and players who have instincts for things, and Jayon Brown is that guy. I think Dean Pease loved Kevin Byard and Logan Ryan. Obviously, Logan Ryan's irrelevant right now. Kevin Byard? Yeah. I don't think Atlanta's trading that cap hit to take down the same cap hit, but he's
transition
a
to Brady Breeze as your starting safety, just getting closer by the day.
Yeah, but no, I don't know. I mean, I think he was a big fan of Jeffrey Simmons and what he could be. He certainly talked about that a lot when Simmons was a rookie, but that's not happening either. So it's a good question though, and it is part of this. Like, those guys do know this roster up and down. So if there was a team that was going to include someone coming back, this would be a natural for that. It's just a question of who. I think Rashaan Evans is probably the most likely, just because you're right. He played better in that last year. He played better in his 2 years under Dean Pease than he played last year. So maybe Pease is like, this guy could be something else. Let me have him back, and we'll see what he does.
When we come back, we will switch gears and get into a little Tennessee baseball. Tony Vitello coming up at 7:45. Looking forward to that discussion coming up with him. Have the Vols finally found a coach that's well worth the investment? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Elijah Campbell here with you on this Wednesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. We're going to have Tennessee baseball coach Tony Vitello come on with us at 7:45. So here in about 12 minutes or so, we'll be joined by Tony. So looking forward to that conversation with him. And, Joe, it's been a wonderful year for Tennessee baseball. They're the number 3 national seed heading into the NCAA tournament. The NCAA regional getting started this weekend. Tennessee taking on Wright State on Friday. This is the first time they will host its regional since 2005. So obviously Vitello has come in and has done a great job with this Tennessee program, and we'll see how dangerous they could be coming up in the tournament. A tough loss in the SEC tournament championship game to a very, very good Arkansas team. So this has been quite the stretch for the Vols as of late. As you look at this program and the emergence of this team, this has been really the first year that I can remember where Tennessee baseball has been a huge story. I mean, I remember, and we talked about it here on the show, the series against Vanderbilt. That was pretty appointment viewing for Tennessee and their fans. The Tennessee is 45-16 overall entering this weekend's regional, so a lot of wins. Their most victories since winning 46 games during their run to the College World Series in 2005. The question now is, what does this mean for Tennessee as they move forward here, and what does it mean for their investment level in Tony Vitello? We've talked about Tennessee a lot in football and basketball and trying to find the right coaches and somewhere to break through in their athletic department right now. This just been so up and down over the course of the last decade. Tony Vitello seems like he could be a very hot commodity around the country. How important is it, in your opinion, for Danny White to make an investment in Tony Vitello and make sure that he's locked up in Knoxville and is there to stay for the foreseeable future?
Well, I think it's important. It becomes really important if one of these programs actually comes after him.
Yep. And
you got 2 right now that are, one's open and one is going to be open because, and that's LSU. They did get into the tournament. So Big Paul M, he's got one more run here before he retires, and that's obviously, you're talking about a gold standard program there. It's a program that, by the way, came after Tim Corbin many years ago. And Vanderbilt paid Corbin to stay here, and I don't know that was all that it was about, but you have to, when people come after your coaches, you gotta invest not just in their salary, you gotta invest in the program, in the facilities, in the assistant pool, all that stuff. So I think Danny White needs to do that anyway. I think Vitello, I believe he makes $580K. Top baseball jobs right now, you're making about $1.2 million. So you're basically maybe doubling your salary here. But I think more important than that, and I talked to Vitello a few weeks ago for a column for The Athletic, but he wants, he wants that field is probably one of the worst in the SEC. It's still great, by the way, Lindsey Nelson Stadium, but when you compare it to the rest of the SEC, it's not up to par in some ways. And a big thing is you just have a total hole out in left field. It's like there's just nothing there. You can see the parking lot back there. And, that's where he would like to see luxury suites. And I tell you what, Tennessee fans are so starved for a winner. You can't possibly tell me that if he stays and they keep going like this, that you wouldn't be able to sell those things. So now baseball makes money for you. Does it become some huge money maker? It's nothing compared to football or men's basketball or women's basketball. But does it help your bottom line? Yeah, quite a bit. Even if you break even in this sport, you're contributing to the greater, the budget. And again, I just think the starvation for a winner for Tennessee fans is something to take into account here too.
Well, I think so too. People over the weekend were living and dying with Tennessee in the SEC tournament. That's all that was on my Twitter feed was Vols fans watching this team play. And look, I don't remember any other time in my life where I've really watched Tennessee baseball for 1 second. I'm a big Tennessee fan. I like watching Vols play football. I watch men's basketball, women's basketball as well. Before this year, I probably spent a combined total of 6 minutes watching Tennessee baseball. I mean, it's just been what it is. And now I'm really interested to watch this team going into this tournament. I think a lot of Vols fans feel the same way. That's a really good thing for your program. And as you said, I think a lot of it has to do with this fan base. They are so ready for somebody to win that they're living and dying with this baseball team. And that's fun to watch. And I hope they have a deep run here. I'm interested to see what that does. But to your point, I think if you're Danny White and you're looking at this right now, you've got a young coach. I mean, Tony Vitello is 42 years old. You've got a young coach in here right now with an opportunity to build this thing up into something special. I'm not saying it's going to be Vanderbilt or it's going to be Tim Corbin or anything like that. But, I mean, how fun was that series this year between Vanderbilt and Tennessee? If you could get to where that series is relevant every single year, that'd be a whole lot of fun for college baseball fans around here. I can tell you that.
Yeah, no, it would. And look, I think Vitello also, he's just really popular as a guy. He's fiery on the field. He's got a big personality. You know, I mean, I just think that Tennessee fans also just are drawn to him, you know, and who he is. I don't know that LSU is – I think if LSU were to come after him, it'd be tough.
Yeah.
That would be – I mean, because, again, I'm trying to – like, you put it in college football terms, I mean, that would be like –
LSU?
But, yeah, maybe. There you go. Yeah, I was going to say Alabama. I don't know if it's quite Alabama, but it's that kind of program. Yeah, I mean, there you go. If Texas A&M comes after him, that would be a big – to me, that would be a big – it would be a big deal to lose him regardless if you're a Tennessee fan. But I think that would be a smack in the face, lose them Texas A&M. Again, that's a program with all they've invested. I mean, there are huge expectations there, huge investment there in baseball, much bigger than like Tennessee, for example. But this is where I think Tennessee can make up the gap. And look, we know the TV. I mean, the SEC has already like fronted more money to these athletic departments coming out of the pandemic. It's going to be just fine financially moving forward. Now, some Tennessee fans are still going to say, no. Every last cent, every last bit of effort and emphasis is on football. I don't care. Nothing else. And I understand the idea there, but they're not going to short football. This is not like, sorry, Josh. You know,
you stay over there in the corner, Heupel.
Yeah, the Peyton Manning room is not going to get a third, diamond plating on the ceiling because we're helping the baseball program. I mean, football is going to be invested in. Football has to win and has to get better players and better coaching, and they're going to be invested in. The basketball programs are in great shape. They have great facilities. They got everything you need. I really think that this is a smart investment, even if the bottom line doesn't necessarily say it. Like when you have a winner, especially I think if you're a new AD, you don't want to come and be the new AD and then let the winner go.
Yeah.
And people are talking about this. People are caring about this, like you said, watching it. People who normally haven't watched this program are watching it. I think you have to take that pulse if you're Danny White.
So, real quickly before we bring on Tony Vitello in the next segment, how dangerous can this team be as regional play gets underway this weekend? If they win this weekend, they'll host the Super Regional as well. How dangerous can this team be as they begin their march towards Omaha this weekend with the NCAA Regional getting underway?
Well, I think they're dangerous. I mean, they don't have, the top-line starters that some teams do that can be huge at this time of year. They have good starters, but they have a good bullpen. They have some depth there, and they have a good lineup for sure. I mean, they've done some damage to some really, really top line pitchers in this league.
They can mash.
Year. Yeah, so they're clutch. I think they're probably going to get into some tough games this weekend. They have a tough draw, but I think this team absolutely can get to Omaha.
When we come back, we will be joined by Tennessee baseball coach Tony Vitello, looking ahead to the NCAA Regional coming up this weekend in Knoxville. We'll do that next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Elijah Campbell here with you on this Wednesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. And it's exciting time for the Tennessee baseball team and the Tennessee Volunteer Faithful. They are the number 3 seed nationally for the NCAA tournament, hosting the regional coming up this weekend in Knoxville. And to help us talk more about that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Tennessee baseball coach Tony Vitello. Tony, what's going on, man? Thanks for taking time to join us this morning.
You bet. Good morning to you, fellas. A lot going on. Trying to recover from a tough loss on Sunday and get ready for an exciting day on Friday.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And, Tony, just the journey this year, going through the full season and SEC play to get to this point where you're the number 3 seed nationally, hosting a regional. What's this journey been like for you and your team to get to this point?
It's been gratifying times two, because last year a lot of these same kids were on our campus, and we felt like we kind of had a breakthrough group to build off what we had done in our second year here, and robbed of that opportunity, as was everybody else in the country. And then I think our guys did a great job of using that as motivation for this year. So this year's come with a lot of different emotions and a lot of different adversity. Again, a lot of stuff everyone's faced, but to see it go on and kind of blossom with the fans and the community has been incredible, and it's come quicker than we thought it would. And it's because of these kids. We've got talent, but so does every other SEC team. But these guys kind of have a unique way they play, and the fans appreciate it, and it's kind of built up more steam than maybe we normally would have.
Yeah, Tony, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, this year compared with 2 years ago, because I think that was a 14-year NCAA drought. You guys broke. There was growing excitement. I mean, you started to see the foundation. Now, 2 years later, how different is it around the community? It just seems like everybody's talking about this team now, and obviously you guys get to host this regional. Like, how have you seen, I guess, that process grow over 2 years?
Yeah, it's been incredibly different. Instead of some people literally saying, well, we used to be fans, but, we went away because it wasn't going the way we wanted, and maybe we'll come back one day, or other people that are kind of on the fence, or, a lot of people met one couple that was outside the stadium at Hoover on Sunday that said, we never even followed baseball. We love Tennessee Vol athletics. There's a lot to love, but we never even really thought to pay attention to baseball. So even some new fans that have jumped on board, and guys like the Vol legends, being all over social media and wreaking havoc with opponents at our field. All those things are incredibly different than 2 years ago. And our environment in the dugout's totally different too. I mean, we went from desperation and a lot of stress and felt like very little room for error to a group that, makes you feel like you can conquer the world in our dugout. And then to, a group that is attacking the things they want, as opposed to kind of feeling out the situation and new to things like being down at Hoover and other things like that.
So, Tony, you mentioned everything that, obviously all of us have gone through over the course of the last year and a half with the pandemic, and you guys started this season. More and more fans were allowed in to eventually where it was the point, at Lindsey Nelson Stadium, where it was a full house out there. What was that process like, and how much of a difference did that make in terms of your group and your guys in the dugout, being able to play in front of fans in that environment that we saw down the stretch in SEC play?
Yeah, not only did it add to their experience, you get the extra adrenaline that kicks in, or extra motivation. We've also seen some really talented pitchers not do so well on our mound, because of, I think, the fan involvement. So there's no question they affected the game, but there's also a mindset thing that's going on here. When we first took the job, self-belief, that you belong in the SEC, that you can beat other teams in the SEC, that you can come back, from a deficit and things like that. It kind of has played into that, because the vision all along was, okay, we kind of know where we are and we know where we want to go, and there's going to be some steps along the way. Well, one step along the way is, if you're playing the right way, the fans rally around you, and they also help you win games. And so it really helped kind of fulfill that vision. So you kind of have the actual in-game experience going on, But as all things in athletics, there's a mindset deal that's going on as well.
So, Tony, this looks like a tough draw. You got some really good I'm sure you've considered this a time or two since you saw it come out the other day. But is this unfair? I mean, is this too loaded a regional? And how would you break down the different teams? I know obviously you're familiar with a couple of them from recent years.
Sure. Well, life's not fair. And, you work your way into so hard to be the highest seed possible. It was going to be 2, 3, or 4 for us. You'd like to reap the benefits of that. But to be honest with you, with the competitiveness that's in our regional, because it is tough, and some people, by number, it's the toughest. It just is. Statistically, it's the toughest. I think it's our brand name. It drops us right in the middle of some of the situations that we've been in, whether it be the end of that year, 2 years ago when we first went to regional, or all year long. I mean, people see our record. It looks like it's been a peachy, year, and there's been some things like that go on, and our kids have handled it well. So I think it drops us right into our competitive mode that our guys and quite frankly, our staff kind of relish in. But I think it kind of all starts with who you play game one. I mean, we could talk about Duke. They've really done well over there. They got the mojo going to win the ACC. And Liberty's a familiar foe, and just Coach Jackson's going to have them well coached. He's the guy who's at North Carolina forever. But the bottom line is game one is your most important game, and a lot of the talk that you're bringing up stems from Wright State's not a 4 seed. I mean, they're just not. I haven't said that yet to media, but everybody's going to be tough when it comes tournament time. But this is not a 4 seed we're playing, and we're familiar with them. They came into our place last year and beat us 2 out of 3. So it'll help fuel some preparation for us, and they'll definitely be ready because they know they've won on our field before, and our guys will be ready for all kinds of reasons.
Tennessee baseball coach Tony Vitello on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And, Tony, we talk all the time about, the SEC and football and how tough that conference is. Baseball blows that away. I mean, it's amazing how many good teams there are in the SEC when it comes to this conference in baseball. How do you think playing in that environment on a week-in, week-out basis helps prepare you and your team now as you head into this tournament starting this weekend?
Sure. Well, I'm not a huge analytics guy, but you're going to have to, if you're in a court of law, you got to have some evidence, and the numbers, incredibly high. They state what you're kind of alluding to is there's almost always at least one SEC team in the final, and there's always 3, maybe 4 in Omaha, 2 at a minimum. And then you could break it down by super regional, and of course we have the most teams in regionals. And, the success is there in the postseason statistically because of what goes on in the regular season. You see a guy like Leiter, Florida's pitching staff. You play against a team like Arkansas. The speed of the league. I mean, you just don't have any room for error because of the speed in the league. The fan bases. So if you are playing on the road, you've dealt with it before. And if you're playing at home, you've dealt with the battle of trying to control your adrenaline and your emotions because the crowd is so into it. The media attention that comes from it. No league is covered more by the media. So I could go on and on and on, but there's numbers that back up why it's the best league to prepare you to make a run for the major leagues as an individual. And then as a player, every kid grows up dreaming of going to Omaha and doing well once you're in Omaha, and there's no league that prepares you more for that.
Tony, a lot of great individual stories on this team, of course. I wanted to ask you about a kid from around here, Mount Juliet, Sean Hunley, and what he's done for you as a guy you've put in so many situations out of that bullpen, a kid who's been there the whole journey with you in Knoxville. How important has he been? How important is he going to be here as you get into regional play?
Yeah, I would say I'd start with how important he is. I probably average maybe 2 to 3 hours more sleep a week because Sean Hunley's on our team. And that might be an understatement. And then to talk about how he's going to be used this weekend, I think you reflect on last weekend. We're playing Arkansas for the SEC championship, and we have a lead, and then for a while there it's a 1-run deficit. If we didn't think we were going to ride Sean like crazy, we bring him into that game, and kind of wear him out, so to speak, because he had already made 2 appearances. But we've really tried to manage his workload. I mean, I'm not an NBA guy, but workload or however you want to phrase it, we've built up to this point where we know he's the horse we're going to ride throughout this thing. And I think he's fresh, and I think he's also got a lot of experience. So it's a good combination going into this deal.
Tony, I also we talked a few weeks ago, of course, about Lindsey Nelson Stadium, which is going to be a heck of a scene this weekend. And, just the future, obviously, hopes of maybe some luxury seating, some improvements and things like that. I know the time for stuff like that, right, is not right at this moment. You guys are about to enter this tournament. But any other developments on that front, Tony, in terms of, maybe conversations with Danny White about what the future may bring in that way?
Yeah, they've been pretty progressive. Obviously, we ended on the road and then in Hoover, but administration came to both of those series in part to support the team and continue kind of talks with what we're trying to do in the long run here, but also to see what it's all about. South Carolina's probably, arguably, I should say, the toughest place to play on the road based off environment in our division. So it was good for our administration, and even President, Boyd was there to see that stuff. There's been some donors recently that have come forward with money, and it's not, hey, we'll help, and it's not, hey, I'll give you $1 million. Like we've had some people step forward with some serious contributions. So everything's moving in the right direction. It's kind of been like our program. It's been steady progress. It hasn't been any one massive thing, and a lot of that has had to do because we're wrapped up in the middle of the season. But also we're getting to know our new administration here. And like I said, they've been progressive, A, about making sure we have full crowds or full capacity, but B, building that relationship and then also exploring, what's the best way to get this thing to the next level or a sustainable level where we can expect to have this type of success every year.
Well, it's certainly been fun to watch, Tony, and we're looking forward to the action continuing this weekend in Knoxville for the regional tournament. Thanks so much for taking time to join us this morning.
Yeah, guys, always love it. Appreciate you, and have a good one.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
you as well. Tennessee baseball coach Tony Vitello has been our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. The Vols have had a wonderful season. They'll look to get started this weekend on the right foot on Friday against Wright State coming up at Lindsey Nelson Stadium in Knoxville. When we come back, we will get back into the Titans. Got a lot of your thoughts to get to on our text line as well, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode, live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com, here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Welcome back in. Hour number 3 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Elijah Campbell here with you on this Wednesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Got the choice is yours coming up later this hour as well. Adam Vingan dropping by at 9:30 for the latest on the Nashville Predators. Preds have some players that will be addressing the media today for the first time since their loss against Carolina last week. So looking forward to that coming up. I believe around 11:45 noon today is when that will start with press conferences. We'll see whether or not Pecorine is a part of that as well. So lots to look forward to today on that front. Right now, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Thanks to Tony Vitello, Tennessee baseball coach, for joining us in the last segment.
Pretty great.
Joe, I think I could listen to that guy talk all day. He's fired up about some baseball. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. He's good, man. He's very good. And, you can see even in a short interview like that, like how he could be effective, on a lot of fronts in that role. So, he's got those kids believing, and it's been really a quick rise. Again, like 2 years ago was his second year, and they get to the NCAA tournament first time in 14 years.
Yeah.
And then last year they were off to a great start, and everything gets canceled. But this is one of those interesting teams, not as loaded as maybe some of his future teams may be if he stays and keeps recruiting the way they're recruiting. But it's veteran, older kids. And there's something to be said for that, to have that kind of experience and just a little bit of age on your team and some real clutch genes in there too.
Absolutely. And Tennessee getting kicked off on Friday against Wright State coming up, which, by the way, Vitello saying there, by the way, Wright State's not a 4 seed in this tournament. I was not afraid to say that either. It's a heck of a draw for Tennessee in this regional coming up in Knoxville.
Yeah, Wright State's 35-11, really good team. People did. They were projected, I think, by everybody as a 3. And, Duke, like, their pitching has been out of this world.
Yeah.
To get them to win the ACC. Like, they've got a bunch of pitchers with ridiculous numbers. So, it's, it's a good, strong regional. It's going to be a really interesting weekend.
Let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ron texting in. Talking about the Titans, let's be honest, guys. We've got maybe 2 or 3 years left with Tannehill and Henry, so make the moves now and make a run, period. We've talked about Julio Jones a lot this week, and we'll see what happens. As we said last hour, a move for Julio Jones could come, I guess, any second at this point. It could also not come at all as we move forward here with this discussion. If you're John Robinson and the Titans, really any general manager in the NFL, and you're identifying what your window is for a time to compete for the Super Bowl, what do you think the challenge is for that at the NFL level? We talk about it all the time in the NHL and the NBA about the window to win a championship. What do you think a true window is in the NFL? And do you think the Titans are in the middle of it? Are they getting towards the end of it? How do you go about identifying what a window to win is in the National Football League is? When there's just so much parity, so much turnover every single year in the league.
Well, in New England had the longest window we'll ever see.
Yes.
It's so they redefined it. And it was coach, quarterback, and you go from the start of that run to the end of it, and those are the two things that were still in place. Other than that, all different. So it's also GM. It's also smart player moves to keep it going and to build for the future. And you're going to cycle down, and you can go through that whole dynasty. And there were down cycles in there. There were down seasons in there. Teams that weren't as good, that weren't really contenders, but they were never too far from it. And that's just not realistic. So to me, you just have to look at who are your great players. What is your team built around, and usually it has to do with quarterback. So for the Titans, you could make the case, hey, why sell out now? Tannehill, relative to the growing QB age of excellence in this league, could still have a lot of years left. You could still have him for another deal. Derrick Henry, maybe he's going to be just, Frank Gore, and he's just going to keep crushing people for years and years to come. You could make that case, but to me, it's you look at those two guys, and that's your window. I think that's how you have to look at it right now. Like, you have a chance with those two guys to reach as high as you can reach if you have the right things around them. So why not do everything to put those things around them? At some point, you're going to need to replace Tannehill. So do you think you're going to get lucky again and trade a fourth-round pick for a fading veteran on some other club who becomes a top-notch, top 10 quarterback for your team? Or do you think you're going to have to go back into the draft and try to find that guy? Probably the latter.
Well, and the question is, when's that going to happen? Because to your point, I mean, Ryan Tannehill is 32 years old. He'll be 33 next month. So you're talking about a 33-year-old quarterback heading into this next year. I mean, right now, I look at his contract, I look at his age, and based on the way he's played in this offense so far, which admittedly, I'm interested to see what that looks like this year because there is going to be, I think, a little bit of a difference. There's no Arthur Smith, Todd Downing coming in, so it's not exactly the same, and there have been some personnel decisions that have been made where the offense is going to look different. But if Tannehill looks anything like he's looked the past couple of years, like there's no reason for me to believe that he can't keep doing this for the next 3 or 4 years at least. I mean, you brought it up, and look, Brady is an extreme example. I mean, he's 43 years old, so I'm not sitting here banking on Ryan Tannehill playing until he's 40 or playing until he's 43. But look around the league right now. I mean, Drew Brees just retired, over 40. Aaron Rodgers just won the MVP at 38. I mean, Tom Brady is 43, just won the Super Bowl. I mean, you're talking about all-time great players there, and Ryan Tannehill isn't that. But I do think with the way the game is now, how much they protect the quarterbacks, quite frankly, how good the Titans' offensive line has been at protecting him the last couple of years, like to me, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Tannehill could still be the starting quarterback on this team 4 or 5 years from now.
So now you get into the question of, because there's a lot of people who say, great, and he's way better because Derrick Henry's behind him. So The window is Derrick Henry. And I'm kind of in between on that. I think Tannehill on his own is pretty good. I think he's demonstrated a lot. He's had to carry this team at times. He didn't have to carry him in the playoff games last year after the 2019, but he's had some massive performances that they needed him to have to win games. But certainly, he benefits from having Derrick Henry behind him. I don't think anybody could argue otherwise. So I think a lot of people will just look at this window like, what's the Derrick Henry window? They both have 3 years left on their deal. Derrick Henry is not showing any signs of slowing down, but the shelf life of a running back historically and typically in this league would suggest that by the end of that deal, if you still have one of the top backs in the league, you have now well outperformed running back expectations.
Yeah.
So to me, the window is, I would say, like I look at it like the next 2 seasons. Realistically, like when you should feel good about Derrick Henry being Derrick Henry, you also know you have A.J. Brown. I mean, you have
and right now you've got A.J. Brown on his
a rookie deal
too.
So for the next 2 years, you have you can pick up that. Well, no, I'm sorry, he's a second-round pick, so you're probably going to renegotiate. But next 2 years, he's on that deal. And you have Tannehill. You still feel like Tannehill may outlast all this, and that may be fine, but you're still probably going through a rebuild, right? I mean, look, maybe not completely, but so much now has been built around Derrick Henry. It's hard to imagine that they wouldn't take a step back when he takes a step back.
Well, I think they take a step back, but the quarterback, he can keep you right there. I mean, he can keep you right there in contention. And with the way Tannehill has played, I know some people, they don't want to admit this and they don't believe this when you say it, but with the way Tannehill has played the last 2 years for this group, you start having discussions about Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, players like that. I don't believe he's as good as those guys, but the numbers tell you he's right there with those guys the last couple of years. Now, again, I still think there's a gap between the Mahomes and the Rodgers of the world and Ryan Tannehill, so I don't want people to think that it's just, Ryan Tannehill is Aaron Rodgers, and that's what you do moving forward. But the numbers would tell you that he's put up here that there's not that much of a difference of what he's played like since he's been here. If he plays at that level, I don't know if a complete rebuild, even without Derrick Henry, is ever going to be necessary. I think you're going to give yourself a chance if your quarterback plays that well.
Okay, so then it sounds like you're more in favor of not doing some big move right now that could tighten you up on the cap later and kick the can and things like that.
Have at it. Do the big move now. You'll still have the quarterback later.
Okay. Because
I'm saying I don't think that they're just automatically, if Tannehill, if Henry goes the next 2 years and by the time 2024 rolls around, he's not the same Derrick Henry. Yeah, that's going to hurt this team. I mean, they're not going to be the exact same. I don't think they're going to go from 12-5 to 4-13 either. I'm trying to do this math in my head to match up that 17-game schedule.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, here's the thing. So if you want another cautionary tale, I mean, just in this division, we talked about the Jaguars, which again, I don't blame them. It's just they had the wrong guy at the most important position. It was the biggest problem. But look at the Texans. A stat was tweeted yesterday. The Houston Texans over the last 4 years have gone from the 4th youngest team in the league in 2017 to the 32nd youngest team.
Jeez. They
are now this old, awful roster, and they have traded picks left and right to go for it. So that's how bad it can get. And of course, there's a lot of things also that have happened that have a lot of issues, but they're an example of a team that over a few years said, okay, and it's kind of like the feeling of Watson's on his rookie deal. What can we do? You got to do it now. You got Watt. He's getting older, all this stuff. That didn't work out. I still would argue that it's worth trying rather than saying, you know what? I like winning the AFC South. I mean, that's something good. I mean, I can't knock teams that go for it even if they pay for it later. As a fan, I would prefer that to let's just always be safe and sound and be pretty good.
Oh, I agree 1,000%. Listen to the game every weekday for your chance to win $1,000. It's the game's 1K payday presented by Kentucky Kingdom and by Hurricane Bay. Listen for keywords at 9, noon, and at 3. And when you hear it, go to thegamenashville.com and enter the keyword for a shot at $1,000. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion on the Titans. How long is their window to win? And how does that affect the way you feel about what they should give up for Julio Jones? We'll get to that coming up next as well. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Elijah Campbell here with you, streaming live on YouTube, on Periscope, and on Twitch as well. Talking Titans, how long is this window open for the Titans, and how does that influence what you would do to get Julio Jones on this team? Let's go to our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joe got a texter that says, I just don't want to get Julio and then potentially not be able to re-sign A.J. Brown when his contract is up because you don't have any money. How much of a concern would that be if you're John Robinson, of making sure you got enough money left over to give A.J. Brown his second deal? And do you think Julio Jones impacts that at all based on his contract status over the next couple of years?
Well, it wouldn't be A.J. Brown because you're going to find the money for A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Now, it could be someone else. It could be, Taylor Lewan's replacement, or it could be, another defensive lineman you need, or another corner you need, it certainly can hurt down the road. Again, if you're doing this thing where if part of this is like restructuring, like Tannehill's deal, which of course has been talked about a lot, then that does put a strain on your cap in future years. That's part of what it does when you restructure. It's not just, you can't just throw it in the closet and lock the door. So it makes things tougher. But A.J. Brown, if he continues to be this player, A.J. Brown will be re-signed by the Titans. That's, they'll find the money for that. It's a matter of just your overall roster quality. Does it get nicked up by this later? And it may well be.
Chad on the text line says, I feel Tannehill has a major regression without Arthur. Henry has always been a two-down back that plays well when playing with the lead, and the Titans didn't do anything to replace what they lost on defense in the draft and in free agency. I have a feeling the Titans are in for a sharp decline, and we haven't realized it yet. We talked about the idea of regression yesterday with this Titans offense. I think it's certainly on the table that this offense could get worse from last year. That's a pretty high bar last year to establish. So it's probably likely that the offense is at least a little bit worse this year. Now, maybe bringing in Julio Jones could change that. What do you think of what Chad threw out there of the Titans didn't do anything to replace what they lost on defense in the draft and in free agency?
Well, I think they did. The Titans did a ton on defense. Now, I don't know if it'll work out, but they
were certainly active.
They did a ton. Yeah. They did a lot. They drafted a corner. They drafted another corner. They drafted an edge. They paid big money for an edge. They paid pretty good money but I think a good deal for a defensive end who I think is going to make a big difference. It's a lot of moves. They've basically swapped out half the D. Butler and Jackson and Vaccaro are gone, and some of those losses are tough. I think those are money losses more than performance losses, but the bottom line is the defense is way different. Can't say they didn't do stuff. We'll see if it works.
Ben on the text line says, once Henry is done, Tannehill's stats could very well suffer. A lot of his success relies on the play-action game, and opposing defenses focusing so much on Derek. The window relies on Henry to keep it rolling.
Yeah, look, I don't doubt that Ryan Tannehill, I fully acknowledge Ryan Tannehill is helped by having Derrick Henry. Any quarterback would be. And you're right, the play-action game is a huge part of this offense. It's effective. They do a great job. They have done a great job, especially that outside zone stuff. It's tough. And a split second for a linebacker or a safety can make all the difference. The windows are bigger. I'm going to go back again on the Tannehill discussion because I hear people say he was garbage in Miami and they got rid of him. Go back and tell me how many 4,000-yard passing seasons he had with no running game in Miami. It was a different offense. They built largely around him. He had good receivers, not great receivers. He had good receivers. He had no running game. It's funny. The one year they did have when Jay Ajayi had that big year in 2016 was his best year too. So, yeah, they go hand in hand. Right. And then Tannehill gets hurt, and they have to start Matt Moore against the Steelers, and he didn't get a chance.
What a time that was.
Yeah, he didn't get a chance to play in the playoffs, but there's still a big misconception about what Tannehill did in Miami. He was not an elite quarterback. Dude, he had big-time numbers in many years. The guy can play. He could play all along. The questions were, can he get you over the hump? Can he stay healthy? Because he blew out the knee. He didn't want to have surgery at first. Then he had the shoulder. Those were the fair questions about him. The Dolphins wanted a clean slate. But people look back on it still and say, yeah, garbage, barely a starter or whatever. Like, no, that's not true. I just think he's roundly underrated for what he does.
Well, look, there's going to be a narrative that comes with Ryan Tannehill until he gets it done in the playoffs in terms of having that big performance. I mean, we heard some of it after the run to the AFC title game, which I think both you and I found to be ludicrous. If you watch Tannehill play in those games, he was largely pretty good. I mean, did he miss some throws? Yeah, but he was largely pretty good in those games. I think the one game you point to where you wanted to see more was last year when Baltimore obviously was hell-bent on not letting Derrick Henry beat them, and that was their game plan. They stacked the box. You would have liked to have seen a better game from Tannehill, and he missed some throws last year in that game. Made a bad decision going to Khalif Raymond, and A.J. Brown streaking wide open down the left side of the field. I mean, it's fair to me to point out that Tannehill was not good in that playoff game, and he's got to be better. But that's going to be a narrative with him from some until he comes out in the playoffs and he puts this team on his back and wins some games in the playoffs for this team. There is going to be a narrative around him from some that he's not good enough to win with in the playoffs, and that's just going to be on him to change that as they get into this next season here.
Yeah, and that's fair. What I think is just dumb is not seeing all that he's done and some of the games and some of the plays he's made that have had a big impact on all the success the last couple of years. It's pretty good, It's pretty good, and when you compare it to, his deal versus other quarterbacks in this league, it's awfully good. But you're right. Next time they're in the playoffs, if they get to the playoffs with this group again, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him and a lot of expectation, which is fair, that he's going to play better than he did last time out.
Heidi from Dixon texting in saying, go get Julio if he's at least decent, but Shane cost us 6 games. Just trade him next year. So Heidi's saying if Julio comes in, he plays well, but Shane Bowen cost the Titans 6 games. Then you can trade Julio after that.
We found a way to bring Shane Bowen into this and blame him for something.
I was wondering when we'd get there.
Poor Shane. By the way, Shane Bowen will speak today, I believe for the first time since he was named official DC, and also Todd, my gosh.
Downing?
My gosh. I take my microphone away.
Todd, don't call me Arthur Smith Downing.
Yeah, Skia Tika. Todd Downing will also talk today for the first time, I believe. So be interesting to hear what they have to say.
Are you going to ask Todd Downing if he's terrified to take over for Arthur Smith and that the ghost of the Oakland Raiders, is it sticking with him? Is that what you're going to ask him?
Maybe I will.
Okay.
Maybe I'll ask him how he would utilize Julio Jones in an offense.
Maybe so.
That probably wouldn't get an answer.
Todd, if there was a certain player who used to play in Atlanta
Todd,
Alabama.
Would you like to engage in some tampering right now, Todd? It's just Zoom, man.
See what we can get into. We'll continue the conversation on the Titans when we come back. We got a lot of your texts to get to on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Right now, though, got to tell you about my friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are here, and you'll be in hoops heaven betting on all the action on FanDuel Sportsbook. There are so many exciting matchups, and FanDuel is taking that excitement to another level because new and existing users can bet risk-free throughout the playoffs. New users can get up to $1,000 back if your first bet doesn't win. Plus, once you've got an account, you can bet one same-game parlay risk-free every single week. This means you can combine multiple bets for even bigger wins. The money line, the point spread, the first basket score, player points, rebounds, assists, everything is on the table. And if you don't win, you'll get up to $10 back. Basketball fans, now is the perfect time to give FanDuel a shot. Just sign up with promo code ROB to bet the NBA playoffs risk-free exclusively on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. You must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. Risk-free bet for first online real money wager only, and refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 14 days. Same-game parlay refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. A max refund of $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same-game parlay available for multiple sports in all states on mobile and web. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5. The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Elijah Campbell here with you on this Wednesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Talking Titans, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Joe got a texter that says, Tannehill has been one of the best quarterbacks we've had since McNair. If we would have had a better defense last year, I think we would have gone further into the playoffs.
One of the best?
I think he's the best by far.
I mean, easily, right?
I don't think it's close. I mean, I'm trying to think of who would be in the discussion with Tannehill
Kerry Collins
outside of McNair.
Had a nice 2008 season, 13-3 team.
Yeah.
He was a good
Vince was fun
bit of
at
a
times.
game manager. Yeah, Vince had a Rookie of the Year. Mariota had a really good
Jake Locker had a nice throw in a preseason
season.
game.
Charlie Whitehurst had some great hair.
Yeah.
little Mettenberger.
There was a little Met show and Whitehurst action. That was fun.
Little, what's his name?
Elijah, you kind of look like Charlie Whitehurst.
was
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I'm shooting for. The clipboard Jesus
Yeah,
look.
he's got the Whitehurst look back there, man. I like it.
Yeah,
I don't think it's close.
Yeah,
Tannehill is. Look, I mean, Tannehill
pretty
gets
clear.
a couple more years at this level. I mean, this is blasphemy to some, but start having a conversation about McNair too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not every pass is not a play action pass.
No.
He's had a lot of third and longs where he's had to make a throw, and he's made a throw. He's had fourth downs where he's had to make a throw, and he made a throw, including 2 at Kansas City in the AFC Championship game. He's had to do more than some might want to give him credit for. But I think some are never going to give him credit for that, so that's fine.
Or do you think if they win a Super Bowl, he will? Like Chase said yesterday, if the Predators win a cup, people still hate David Poile and John Hines. Do you think that if Tannehill wins the Super Bowl and he throws for 500 yards, they give some credit then?
Well, okay, if you throw for 500 yards, maybe. But if he throws for like 295, it's like, nah, Brady would have thrown for 350.
Maybe he would have. He is the greatest quarterback of all time.
Well, no doubt. Hey, no one is trying to compare Tannehill's body of work to Brady's body of work, or any of those great top-tier quarterbacks. No. He's a pretty strong second-tier guy.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Our buddy Ron texting in, not for long. That's what the NFL stands for. There's no guarantees, which means players and windows are closing. It's hard enough just to make the playoffs. When you're this close, you got to do whatever it takes to go for it and pay the price later. This is why you gamble. Push all your chips in if you're the Titans.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is kind of the crux of it. And, I thought Jared yesterday on his show brought up some good points about Floyd Reese and his time as GM and the go-for-it era they had. And, of course, they get to the Super Bowl, and then the go-for-it era from there was, they're getting back, Right. They did some restructuring of deals. They did what they could do to keep everyone around and pay everybody. And eventually then you have a purge, which is what happened. And then eventually your GM gets fired, which is what happened. And so that was kind of Jared's argument against this move. This is, why do you want to go down that road? But see, I'm listening to that and saying, I understand that they didn't get back there. They didn't win it. They did have some great teams after that.
It was totally worth it.
You have to do that, right?
Yeah.
So do the alternative then. You just sort of say, you know what? Let's never have that big dip, and let's just stay here in the middle somewhere where we're pretty good, but we're going to be we're not going to have these go for it moves. We're not going to overextend ourselves, and we'll be fine, and we'll never have a big dip. I don't get it. I don't think that is not the point of this is to try to win a championship.
Well, and let's be honest here. Like most times in pro sports, when you go for it, it doesn't work. Like you don't win. Most of the time,
exactly.
You don't. But I mean,
doesn't mean it wasn't worth trying.
Yeah, and if I'm a fan and I'm sitting here, and look, maybe you're a fan, and you just don't believe Julio Jones is the big difference maker, and then that's fine. I mean,
that's a different discussion.
That's a different discussion, and if you don't believe that Julio Jones is the difference between this team getting to a Super Bowl or not getting to a Super Bowl, that's fine. Like you don't have to be, an advocate for Julio Jones to come here. But if I'm a fan and I believe whether it's Julio Jones or anyone else that a player can take you over the top, and the Titans just sit back and say, nah, we're good. We'll just keep doing things how we're doing them. I mean, that would infuriate me at some point.
Well, like they played the clip. So Floyd had the clip last year, and he said, like, the Clowney thing, but if you don't want to, if you want Jonnu Smith next year, well, then you don't do this. I heard him. People heard him. And I'll go back to that moment without knowing what happens with Clowney, because obviously now everyone would say, don't do that.
Yeah.
But I'll go back to that moment. You just got to the AFC Championship game. Your huge weakness is pass rush. You gave $9.5 million to a real questionable acquisition, and in Vic Beasley, and I think you absolutely do what they did. It didn't work. They're not toast because of it. It hurts to not have John. It hurts to not have had that rollover cap money. But I think it was worth it in the moment, and I think right now it's worth it again. And I would hate to be the team that didn't try and that just sort of was happy being 10-7 or 11-6 in the future.
Yeah.
Try to be better than that. And you're going to cycle down. You're like, whether they go for it now or not, they're going to cycle down, and people are going to probably lose their jobs, and there's going to be a new quarterback, and you're going to be behind like, this league is built for that. You're not going to avoid a cycle down unless you are the Patriots dynasty. Tell me how many. Your Packers, they've had Rodgers for a long time. They've been mostly good for that time, right?
Yep.
But they've had their ups and downs.
Yep.
If you have an all-time Hall of Fame lock, all-time great case for the best ever quarterback, then you can avoid that stuff.
Exactly.
If not, show me who else has.
Exactly. That's what the NFL is built for. I got a texture that says, in sports, if you're not going for it, then why are you even there? Most of the time that's the case. Like, look, there are times to go for it and there are times to not go for it. Like, the Predators this year at the trade deadline don't need to be going and buying a bunch of people. And they didn't do that. And, you got Branson in there, but it's not like the Predators sold the farm to go try to get Taylor Hall and all these people to add to this team. So there's a time to go for it and a time not to. But to the texture's point, like, eventually you reach a point in your window where you just got to try to win now. And, yeah, you got to know a couple years down the road, 3-4 years down the road, maybe you're not going to be as good, and you've got to go through a down cycle and try to build back up. But at the end of this conversation, if the Titans suck 5 years from now and they've got a Super Bowl to show for it, will anybody care? No. It would absolutely be worth it if you go win a Super Bowl.
Now, if they get close but don't win it and cycle down, there'll be a lot of people complaining. I'll still say, I promise you, at that moment, it was worth trying.
Yeah.
David Poile, the moves were bad, but the impulse to go for it, I think, was exactly the right timing. And it really, the go for it started for him with a good move, in my mind, which was Weber for Subban.
Agreed.
And then the ensuing go for it moves were bad, but the idea of going for it in that window, I think, was absolutely dead on. I think it's what you do there. You just make better choices. John Robinson, last year, it's what you do. You make better choices than Beasley and Clowney.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Santa in Portland texting in. It's not fair to point out anything about Tannehill's play until the defense plays better than a pathetic level. Once the defense plays as good as the local high school, then we can talk about Ryan's play.
Well, but people talk about Ryan's play from his first year when, again, he didn't have big stats in the playoff games, so some people apparently didn't watch those games and didn't see him making big throws.
And the defense was good that year.
And the defense was good that year. Yeah. That's my point. He has played with this team when the defense has actually supported him. But then the defense was standing on the sideline when he made two huge throws to keep the ball late at New England and the two touchdown pass at Baltimore, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, also, like, we've talked so much about last year in the defense and how that's got to get better. And we had a texter earlier point out, if the defense is better last year, maybe the Titans make a deeper run in the playoffs. I thought given what the defense was last year in that Baltimore game, they gave you a shot. You were right there in the playoffs.
They did.
The offense didn't take advantage of it.
No doubt. No, the defense actually, if you going into that, someone told me the defense was going to do what it did, then I would have said Titans are absolutely winning this game.
Yep.
So, no, that last game for Tannehill sets it up that his next postseason game, there's a lot of pressure on him.
1025 The Game and the Nashville Predators will host a 615 Day celebration presented by Social Furniture at Fort Ice Center, Bellevue, June the 15th, benefiting Boys and Girls Clubs of Middle Tennessee. This all-day event will feature fun for the whole family while paying tribute to Nashville's annual 615 Day, an occasion that pairs Music City's area code with the date of June 15th. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com. When we come back, it is time for The Choice is Yours. Joe Rexrode in the questions chair today. We'll do that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. And it's that time of the week. Time for The Choice is Yours here on Robby and Rexrode. We throw out different scenarios both in sports and in life, and then we have a lot of fun reacting to those scenarios, taking your thoughts as well on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Joe Rexrode in the questions chair today. Joe Rexrode, I turn things over to you.
I'm pretty excited about these questions. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, yeah. That's good news.
So give me sports or non-sports?
Let's go non-sports.
Non-sports. Okay. Which movie sequel do you wish was made that was never made?
Okay.
Which movie sequel do you wish wasn't made that was made?
Oh, man.
Now, this is open-ended, so I got to give you guys a little bit of time. I can answer it first if you guys want to think
go right
about
ahead.
All right. So the one I wish was made, I got to go Dazed and Confused 2. Now, this could be a disaster. Richard Linklater's not making any sequels. But first of all, just to let Ben Affleck continue the only acting role in which he was good, playing a dude in like his 14th year of high school. Matthew McConaughey is a mid-20s dude who looks like he's 43, hitting on high schoolers. Maybe following these kids along in college. That movie was basically perfect, so I want more of that movie. My non-sequel that I wish wasn't made, the temptation to say Caddyshack 2 because it's just an abomination.
Yeah.
And obviously the original was great. But I'm going to go Godfather 3, which to me the first two are total perfection, and that should be the whole story. And Godfather 3 was such a big deal, and there was some good stuff, but ultimately it just downgrades the entire thing. So I would wipe that from existence.
Elijah Campbell, do you have an answer?
I will go, and Robby, this might be a little controversial for you.
Oh, boy.
I want to say the latest run of Star Wars movies should not have been made.
Oh, I'm 100% with you.
I was not a big fan of a lot of those. I lost interest because I felt like that first one was just a New Hope redone.
It was.
And I'm sure they made a crap ton of money from it, which was the intention. But the quality of it wasn't up to my liking. I think we kind of oversaturated the Star Wars product a little bit.
Real quick, you think that these last three are worse than the three before them, the prequels?
Yes.
Oh, God.
I'm going to throw this out there.
I'm nostalgic for the prequels.
The Last Jedi, one of the worst movies ever made. It's awful.
I think that the first one of the last three was fantastic.
Yeah, because it was a New Hope remade. It was the same plot line.
Exactly. The exact same one.
But
Rogue One was really good. I think that's a standalone.
Rogue One was fantastic.
Great
That's
movie.
A separate thing, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Anyway, continue.
Keep going. All right.
And then this one, okay, I know The Dark Knight Rises was made after The Dark Knight, and of course you can't remake a Dark Knight or have a sequel to a Dark Knight movie with Heath Ledger's The Joker because, well, he's unavailable. But I would have loved to have seen or had a little more closure to the end of that movie with maybe another standalone. I'm a fan of ambiguous endings to movies, but that one I wanted a little more closure on. Understandably, we can't have that. But if we were in my world and I had things my way, we would have added an extra 2 hours to that movie, and
I like it
in the form of a sequel.
I would say this. I would say it's in terms of movies that I did not want to see a sequel made. The Hangover. I thought The Hangover, the first movie, was pretty good. 2 is okay. 3 is awful. I don't
think I've seen 3. 2 is fine.
I would not see 3. It's like my favorite movie is Miracle, and you can't make a sequel to it because we've not beaten the Soviet Union in the play since then. I don't know. I'd have to come. I'll come back to you on that answer.
All right. Okay. That's fine. All right. So sports. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of both Tennessee and Vanderbilt fans here. Now you can do the Tennessee fan part, but this is the same question for both fan bases. Okay. I want to see how you answer it for both. You can have a baseball national championship this year and continued shots at it for the next decade. You're going to have a very elite program for the next decade. Or you lose this weekend, your baseball program goes backward from here, but you are guaranteed one SEC East championship in the next decade in football. For each fan base, which are you choosing?
Well, this is easy for me. For Vanderbilt, give me the baseball. It just basically is you're marching forward. You're continuing the baseball dominance. You've got a chance to win every year, and football might rise up every now and then, have a good season, but they're not winning the SEC East. For Vanderbilt, I think you just keep this baseball train rolling and let Tim Corbin keep doing his thing.
But you're guaranteed for Vanderbilt to have that SEC East. If you
I know.
Switch the other. Okay.
I know.
Okay.
I'm still going that with baseball for Vanderbilt. Tennessee, give me the SEC East. I love Tony Vitello, friend of the show. And this has been fun. Give me the SEC East football.
So on the flip side, if I take the football option, where does that leave baseball? So for Vandy,
goes backwards.
Goes backwards.
Your program starts going the wrong way.
I'm kind of leaning towards Robby on that, but it would be really cool to see Vanderbilt in one SEC championship game. However, so you're not guaranteeing the SEC championship, just an appearance in the game as the East winner. Because Vanderbilt's going to play Alabama and probably get beat 59-0 or something like that. So I think I would go. I'd mirror Robby's here and see the Vols in an SEC championship game, and then Vanderbilt continue doing what they do in baseball.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm going to agree with both you guys. I think Vanderbilt has a lot of pride in this program, and it's important to Vanderbilt fans, and you want to see how long this can continue. As great as an SEC East title would be, I mean, I think Vanderbilt, if you could get to 6-7 wins yearly, I think you would be pretty happy. And for the Vols, as great as this is, and I think a lot of Vols fans would love to see this continue. I mean, any sort of football success you would have, I think you gotta jump on it, right? I mean, it's been a long time.
By the way, the sequel, the movie, I've come up with one.
Now what you got?
Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? Love that movie. I need a sequel.
Okay.
I don't know what sequel would look like there, but I enjoy that movie very much.
I like a little bluegrass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
There you go.
All right, you can go to any musical artist tour. I don't think I've asked this before. But even if I have, whatever, we'll do it again.
Okay.
You can go to any musical artist tour at any venue at any point in history. What do you choose?
Ooh.
Again, since this is open-ended, I can go first if it helps you
You go
guys.
ahead.
All right, well, I want to pick. The only Radiohead tour I haven't seen is OK Computer. Yeah, Creed. I got to see them live for free, and I wanted to get paid for it. My wife went and saw them at Radio City Music Hall on the OK Computer tour in college, which makes me really jealous. So I would almost pick that. But I'm going to go Led Zeppelin, 1971, touring for their fourth album, 10th of May, 1971, in Liverpool, England. That's the concert I choose.
Okay. I like that.
Just go down in a sea of Jimmy Page riffs.
I like it.
Oh, that's good.
Can my answer be something that, I would love to see Billy Joel at Madison Square Garden. Okay. I would love to see it. Does that count as a tour? Because he's there every third day.
Yeah, he's done it many times. Sure,
I know.
But you could pick a year too, touring for the Stranger album in 1978 or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Give me some Billy Joel at MSG.
Okay.
That's on the bucket list,
good.
by the way.
Yeah, that's good.
I better get to work on that.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would go, if I was going on a specific tour, it'd be to see David Bowie doing Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust anywhere. Ooh. Venue doesn't matter. But
74, maybe 75.
That's my favorite album of all time. Yeah, and then live.
I've had many people tell me the best concert they've ever been to was the Dave Matthews Band at the Starwood Amphitheater that no longer exists here in Nashville. But that was the best, most fun they've ever had at a concert.
I'm not a huge Dave Matthews fan. Yeah. My wife is. She's gone. I mean, she's literally gone to 20 plus, but she's taken me to many of them now. I will say. Man, they are so good live. Just the drumming alone is insane. So, yes.
A lot of jamming out.
Yeah. All right. Last one for sports. Would you rather, this is 3 options, Nashville get a Major League Baseball team or an NBA team or neither but be in the future rotation for Super Bowls, college football playoff games, and Final Fours? And, of course, there has been a women's Final Four. There should be more of those here as well. Which of those 3 would you choose for Nashville?
Elijah, would you like to go first and just get yours out of the way?
Oh, man. I want to go NBA team. That would be so much fun for me personally. But, I would die to go to a Final Four. That'd be so cool in Nashville. And then one Super Bowl here would be really cool, too. Yeah, that's a bucket list thing, is to be at a Final Four.
I thought Elijah was going straight NBA here, no questions asked.
But it's close. It's a coin flip. I win either way. But I really want a Final Four. That'd be sweet.
I think I'd go NBA. Look, a Super Bowl here would be great. A Final Four here would be great. But you're also talking about once every 8 years, 10 years if you get in the rotation? NBA teams here, they're here every year. Give me the NBA.
Yeah, and you think about just all the great players and teams coming in. I'm tempted with either of those teams. I think it would be great. But I'm going selfishly with the last one. Get those games in here. I think it would be great events for Nashville. And also, it would be less work because there would not be a Major League Baseball / NBA team here to be covering on top of everything else. So there you go. Less work is my choice.
I mean, if we went MLB, you'd have a lot more to talk about in summertime, too.
That's true. And then you got those days at the ballpark. And,
long days.
I need beauty tanning in the summer.
Yes, that is for sure. Let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Had somebody, Chris in Nashville, saying that Anchorman 2 should have never been made.
Oh, man. That's a good call. That is a very bad sequel to a great movie. Oh, boy. What the heck did they do with that sequel? I mean, it was a good premise, too. Kind of like the CNN early 80s, cable news, but Just what in the world?
Doug on the text line says, I wish they had a sequel for Salt. Apparently that's a movie.
Pepper.
I don't know the movie.
I must have missed out on that one.
I missed that one. Huh. Okay.
Kyle from White House saying they should make a sequel for Step Brothers and one they shouldn't make, Wayne's World 2.
I never saw Wayne's World 2. I love Wayne's World.
I can't imagine Wayne's World 2 is very good.
I've heard people say it was actually pretty good, though.
Really?
People I don't necessarily trust, but people.
Oh, okay. Movie sequel, Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood. Use his son for the sequel. This is coming from Danny.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Okay.
I like that.
There's a lot of sequels that shouldn't have been made, but it's interesting to think about the ones that could be made.
Chris in Nashville also saying Jimi Hendrix at Monterey Pop and Dave Matthews Band, big thumbs down. Not a fan of Dave Matthews Band.
Like I said, I don't listen to them normally or whatever, but if you see them live and then you still are thumbs down, I don't know, man. I think they change minds when you see them live.
That is today's edition of The Choice Is Yours. A marvelous job done by our own Joe Rexrode. Well done. Way to go.
Thank you. And good job for you guys. Elijah, you're ready with those answers, man.
And I am.
Porus got big shoes to fill.
I will just throw trash at the latest Star Wars trilogy all day long if I need to. When we come back, we'll get back into the Nashville Predators. Ask the question that Darren Donica chased throughout the year yesterday, which is an interesting one. Do you consider this season to be a success for the Predators? We'll get into that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Final hour of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Elijah Campbell here with you on this Wednesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Going to have Adam Vingan from The Athletic joining us later this hour at 9:30. We'll get into all things Nashville Predators with him. Also, going to be hearing from some Predators players later today as well, right around 11:45, 12 o'clock later this afternoon coming up. So looking forward to that conversation with the players. Should be some interesting comments made, and we'll see whether or not Pekka Rinne talks today as well And if he does, is he going to address his future? A lot of things on the table when it comes to the Predators. And one of the discussions that has been had so far since the Predators have been eliminated by Carolina is, do you consider this season a success for the Predators? Now, Darren Donegan-Chase was talking about this yesterday. Joe, I know you've been asked about it a few times. I've been asked about it a few times as well. I think there are a lot of different ways that you can go with this question. And I kind of view it this way. I think there are parts of this season for the Predators that were absolutely successful. Number one, I feel pretty good about John Hynes right now. I think he did a good job, especially in the second half of the season, of managing this group. I think he has established what he would like the identity for this team to be. I think they largely played that way coming down the stretch. I still think there's some work to do to getting your top players to play that way all the time. And that's the next challenge for John Hynes as he moves into this next season here. So I consider that part of this season a success. I think you found your franchise goaltender for now. I mean, I think Saros was awesome down the stretch. We talked about it to begin the show. Was not named a Vezina finalist. I think both you and I feel like he should be a Vezina finalist. I'm not overly surprised that he wasn't, just given the way this voting goes sometimes, but I think we both feel like he's gotten snubbed there. So that part of it, I find to be successful. Saros was awesome. I think you feel great about him heading into next year. But it's difficult for me to just automatically call this season a success based on you've signed contracts to guys like Johansson and Duchesne and Yossi and Ellis and Forsberg and Arvidsson. I mean, you can keep going down the list. Ekholm as well. That are built to win right now. You're supposed to be competing for championships now. That's what they were doing a couple years ago. That's what we were sold as when they signed these contracts, that this is going to be a team. This is going to be a core that competes for championships for years to come. And we know what the story's been the last couple of years. It's been trending one way. I think there's been a certain transformation that's happened with this team this year, and we'll see where that goes heading in this offseason. But it's difficult for me to separate that part of this discussion and then sit here and talk about getting put out in the first round as a success. I know people view that differently. I know that you're going to get opinions all over the map. But I think to sit here and act like this year was absolutely a 100% success, I can't go there. That's not something I can do.
Yeah, there were successful parts to it. I mean, but if you are being asked to say one thing or the other, and of course we love to do that, like put the label on this, or is this yes or no, yay or nay, good or bad, I can't say success. I would have said success had they beaten Carolina. And then whatever after that is whatever after that. And that is, I mean, even that represents a change from, I mean, what did we say? I don't know. Answer the question after the 2017-18 season. Was that a success? Team won the President's Trophy. Then they lost in the second round to, in what we thought was perhaps the best two teams in the league.
Yeah.
Of course, neither of them ended up winning it that year, but they were among the top 3, 4, 5 teams in the league that year.
Sure.
So was that a success?
I would say yeah.
Okay.
President's Trophy. Look, if you're basing it just purely on postseason success, that's difficult to do in the NHL. And it just is. I mean, the Lightning got swept. They're the best team, one of the best teams we've seen in the history of the league in the regular season.
Well, there's a great example then. So they were incredible in the regular season. They got shocked by Columbus. Was that season a success?
No, but the Predators, there's a difference between losing in Game 7 and getting swept in the first round.
In Game 7 against another great team.
Right.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people would still argue about that.
Sure.
You know? And some people, again, we've got like Ron on the text line, who's been a good sport on the text line today, is like championship or bust. So if you're a championship or bust person, then there's no point even taking part in this. It's very simple. It's the trophy or not, and it's just, move on to something else. I agree, like with what Chase said yesterday about there's some people that are on the fire Poyle, fire Hynes, fire everybody, blow it all up crowd. Although I disagree that, like, if they won a cup, I think I think people would be okay with Poyle if they actually won a cup.
I agree.
I mean, it's been, Poyle's approval rating 4 years ago was what in the fan base? 99.9%.
He could have run for mayor.
Right. And since then, they've been going since 18. They've been going the wrong way in some cases because of his moves. So I don't know what it is now. What is it now then?
I still think it's probably a little bit above 50. Like, I don't think that there is just like this. I don't think the majority of the Preds fan base is like, oh, David Poile, get him out.
Well, okay, but you're saying I'm not saying fire him. I'm saying approval rating. Like are happy with the job he's done. I don't think it's more than 50%.
I don't think it's more than 50 right now.
Yeah.
No.
And again, like most of those people would be swayed if they kept the trajectory they just had of the last half of that season, and they carry that into next year, and they're a lock playoff team with a chance to make a run next year. Well, I think then you start feeling better about it. You feel better about some things because some of these young guys who we weren't sure about are starting to show that they're NHL players.
Right. I mean, look, that's why this question is so complicated. I mean, the guys we're talking about, you're a couple of bounces away from beating Carolina in this series, which is true. I mean, you go to overtime 4 times in a row. You had the game right there for you in Game 5. You're up 3-1 in Game 6. I mean, you're a couple of plays away from beating Carolina in that series and moving on and taking Tampa Bay on in this round. And look, who knows what would have happened there. I mean, Tampa Bay is very good. As we know, they're up 2-0 now on Carolina. But, the tough part about hockey is you also look at that series against Carolina, and you're down 0-2. Both the games at home go into double overtime. You're 2 bounces away from getting swept. Like that's what the Stanley Cup playoffs are. The margin for error is so small, and I think that's why at times it can be really difficult to really try to evaluate where you are in the NHL. That's what I think is part of what's challenging for David Poile and the Predators this offseason, answering the question of how close are you to competing for a Stanley Cup. Like, I think that's difficult to answer because you've got to factor in a ton of things. Your goaltender you feel great about. That's going to give you a chance. You won 20 of 28 coming down the stretch in the regular season. Is that what you are, or is that you getting hot coming down the stretch? We'll see what happens in the rest of this Carolina series as well. Right now, they have totally outplayed Tampa Bay, and Andrei Vasilevsky's been Andrei Vasilevsky, and they're down 0-2 in the series. Like, if Carolina comes back and beats Tampa Bay in this series, and they go on to win the Stanley Cup, like, do you feel like you're right there with Carolina? There's a lot of things to try to sift through if you're the Predators this offseason to determine how close you are. But to me, I keep going back to your highest paid forwards are not playing like it. And if your highest paid forwards are not playing to the level that they're paid, it's just hard to win in this league. It's hard to win a championship if your highest paid players aren't your best players. It just is.
Oh, no question about it. Now, I will say on the success question, when you look at the postseason, and I wrote this after they lost to Carolina, I think this is the first time they've overachieved in the postseason since 2017. I think that was their best postseason playoff series performance, and yes, I am including last year as the playoffs, again, like the Winnipeg series was just all over the map, but I think it was their best since the Stanley Cup final. Their best, because again, let's remember that performance, to get 2 and almost get 3 in your home building with Colton Sissons as your top center and with Freddie Hockey, lighting up the
zooming
world.
Around out there.
No Fisher, no Johansson, no Fiala. I mean, Ryan Ellis on a torn up knee. I mean, that was pretty epic. I think this was their most impressive postseason performance since then. But I still think the bar is higher for this organization at this moment than saying a season with a first-round loss counts as a success.
So we talked about if it's a success, if it's not a success, but we've also said that playing as well as they did against Carolina kind of justifies what David Poile did at the deadline. Do you still feel that way? Is that something that is influenced entirely about what happens with Granlund moving forward? How do you feel about that as we sit here today?
I'll stick with the same thing. I said 3 things. So far, 2 boxes have been checked. We'll see on the third. Do they make the playoffs? Yes. Do they have a good showing? Yes. Do they re-sign Granlund? That, to me, then validates what he did. And, I mean, re-signing Granlund, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what the market is for him. Obviously, it wasn't what he liked last summer, but it was a summer like there will never be another summer like that again, which is why he was even here in the first place again, to become this crucial player who may be even more important if things change down the middle.
We'll continue this discussion when we come back, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Do you consider this past season a success for the Nashville Predators? We'll get to those thoughts coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025, The Game. Go to theGameNashville.com to check out Nashville's best deals. This week, purchase a $30 Boomboss Craft Pizza and Tap House gift card for only $15. Try their award-winning pizza, 20-plus local beers and drafts at all locations. It's the place to go to bring the family or come for pizza, beer, and sports. 4 Middle Tennessee locations in Bellevue, Murfreesboro, Spring Hill, and in East Nashville as well, which has a huge video wall. Get yours now at theGameNashville.com. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. We'll be joined at 9:30 by Adam Vingan from The Athletic, so looking forward to that conversation coming up with him. Right now, asking the question, was this Predators season a success in your mind? Let us know on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Our friend Taylor from Fort Campbell texting in, I think this season showed what our future can be with how our rookies played this year, especially in the second half. I think I'm most impressed with Jeannot and Carrier, and then with Tomasino coming up next year possibly, our future is looking great. I think to Taylor's point, you feel a lot better about some of the younger players, the future of this team, than I think you did this time a year ago. I mean, this time a year ago, I was looking at the prospect pool, and Carrier was kind of on the fence. You didn't know if he was ever going to make it. Tolvanen, you didn't know what was going to happen with him either. Tomasino, I think you still felt good about. But outside of those couple of guys, Trennan was just,
who knows?
Who knows what happens there?
Olivier, not on the radar.
I mean, Tanner Jeannot was definitely not on the radar. So I think you certainly feel a lot better about your pipeline right now than you did this time a year ago. And that goes back to when answering whether or not this season was a success or not, you can take it a bunch of different ways. I certainly think from that part of it, you feel pretty good about the direction of your young players moving forward.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and that's where it's when you take it to the Poyle discussion, I think the last season was a good reflection on what's been going on up and down the scouting department, right? I mean, they've obviously found more. I mean, because some of these, including I think ours at the Athletic, like the farm systems and everything, have been ranked among the lowest in the league in recent years. Some of that is also selling off young players and picks and prospects, things like that. But obviously, they've identified some good players, and Milwaukee has been extremely important in terms of developing guys. I mean, Carrier, I watch him and I'm like, so how, what did we miss with him? Did everything just click for him, or has he been this guy all along? I mean, people didn't notice, or what? Because to me, at this point, I think we've seen enough here with him over the last few months to think he's going to be pretty good in the next few years. Like, he's got some stuff figured out. Yeah,
he looks great out there. Now, I thought Dante Fabro after that first year coming in here was going to be pretty good too. And we find him in an interesting spot right now.
But there's a big difference in seasoning, right?
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, that's the thing. That's the difference between those two guys is one of them has kind of gone through going about it the hard way, and sometimes that really helps.
Absolutely. Ben on the text line says, it's a subjective question, but overall not a success. Depends on what your goals and expectations were. Finding out that Saros is legit is great, as well as so many young, hungry guys showing they belong in the league. The goalposts were moved as the season went along as well. Regardless of all that, this team is stuck if they can't get away from overpaid ghosts that disappear too often. David has to fix this as soon as possible, or he should be replaced.
Yeah, with the whole success thing too, it's like, is it a success if you're on expectation? So, going into last year, I think we both picked the Preds to be the fourth team in the Central.
Yep.
And I would have picked them probably to not advance in the playoffs. So if that's your expectation going into a season and that's exactly what happens, does that make it a success or not a success?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I guess you could argue success.
I mean, to me, it's just that your expectations are that they aren't going to be very good. So I don't call that a success.
Right. Well, and I still go back to the larger picture. That's this whole time, and I've talked about it many times here on the show, that's what I have a hard time separating is you're still supposed to be in your window to win. And to me, it goes back to that. Like, you're supposed to be with the contracts that you've signed. There's no reason right now. Look, I mean, there's no reason we should be having conversations about Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene and whether or not they're going to be here next year. I mean, they're both relatively young in terms of this league. I mean, Johansson's 28. He'll be 29 next year. Matt Duchene's 30 right now. I mean, it's not like you're dealing with ancient players here. So we should not be having this discussion. This should be something where they are two players that are driving forces offensively, and you're competing with the best teams in the league. Now, you're not going to win every year. We saw it in the playoffs. Sometimes really good teams get put out in the first round. But I think if you gave everybody some truth serum right now and they said, are the Predators a contender for the Stanley Cup? My answer is no. Like, they're not a contender for the Stanley Cup right now. And to me, that's disappointing. You're supposed to be with the contracts that you've signed, not only with the two guys I just mentioned, but Forsberg and, Ellis, Yossi, Ekholm, all these guys that are still theoretically in the primes of their careers, you're supposed to be competing for championships. And right now, I don't consider the Predators a Stanley Cup contender. So if that's the case, how can I consider a first-round exit a success? Like, those two things just don't add up to me.
I agree. I think that the difference between this year and certainly the last two, just the last two, because 3 years ago, I think there still was this feeling, okay, this crew can do damage, but the difference is that there's some reason for optimism. I mean, there are some new developments that make you think, okay, you could start going in a better direction. And that really wasn't – I mean, 2 years ago, it was just everyone was like, okay, well, Subban, it's got to be Subban out and Duchesne in, and it's exactly what it was. A year ago, there wasn't much – I mean, a year ago, it was like, gosh, Saros isn't up to this, and Rene is about to retire, and what do you have to look forward to? So, I mean, so there's some more optimism, but I think that's a different thing than the success conversation.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. George Scoville texting in. I don't disagree with Joe's point yesterday that this season validated scouting operations, but every year since 2017 has made the Cup run feel like it happened in spite of Poile rather than because of him. The youth was a success this season, and that's another dynamic of this, but we were promised a youth movement. He signed bargain veterans, and only injuries forced his hand. Why does Poile perennially slow walk the touted prospects?
Well, here's what I'll say. I've heard a lot of this, and I agree in general that this youth movement only happened out of necessity largely. But when you talk about these bargain veterans, how important was Eric Halla in this run and in the postseason?
Yeah.
How important was Nick Cousins once he got into the lineup?
Granlund. I mean, they signed Granlund 3 days before the season started.
Yeah, well, him too. I don't even think about him, but you're right. I mean, if you're counting him, I think the third pairing signing didn't work out as well as you hoped, but I think you have to sign some bargain veterans, don't you? I mean, you have to fill things out. The problem is what we keep going back to. It's the people you're paying a ton of money to that aren't living up to that.
There's a text here that I think perfectly sums up how I feel, and this is put very well. Got a texter that says this team has been underachieving for so long that this season looked like overachieving.
That's well put.
I think that's a pretty good way to sum up how I feel about it.
That's well put. Now, I will argue on the one thing that I think it actually was overachieving in the playoff series.
Agreed.
But again, then that means you are what? It means you're not really a contender. And that's the overall disappointment of everything because it's still constructed and paid to be one.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that says, Poile failed recognizing Milwaukee's talent. They were only given a chance due to COVID and injuries. Poile has to go. The new GM needs to be Scott Nickel. So there are still some fans out there that would like to see the Predators move on from Poile. I'm here to tell you, that's not going to happen this summer.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath on that. I think I will say too on Poile's behalf on George there, the text about everything in spite of Poile. I mean, I just don't think that's fair. The team that got to the very last step there in 2017 was flat out built by him.
Yeah.
So, that's not in spite of him. I mean, again, the history of Poile is he had a lot of years where he couldn't even do what a lot of GMs can do.
Well, think about people who are primarily responsible for that run. I mean, obviously Pekka, and that goes without saying. But Ryan Johansson, he was the best player on the ice. He traded for Ryan Johansson. PK Subban, Matthias Ekholm, that's a pretty good pair that year. I think the move of Subban for Weber, even though people can look back on it now and maybe question it a little bit, I think that was the right move at the time. So I think if you're going to talk about Poile now and bash him for the moves that he's made lately, a lot of which have not worked. He deserves the criticism that he gets for that. I think you also have to give him credit for the moves that did work that put them in that position to begin with.
Yeah, there's no way that they got to the Stanley Cup final despite him. I mean, he built that team. Now, his go for it time period has been a lot of fails, really costly ones. And it's interesting, that's where he was then, and so now Robinson's kind of in that go for it phase 2.
Yeah.
I still say Poyle should have gone for it. You just you don't do the exact moves, and I'm saying the same thing about Robinson. What is the point of all of this if you aren't throwing everything you can at trying to win a championship when you're close?
Let's give a final update to our poll question of the day at 1025 The Game on Twitter. Should Preds fans consider this season a success? 52% say no, 48% say yes. That's about as close as it gets right there.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. It's a good question, Darren, Donick, and Chase. And it was good to kind of get mad at you guys.
Yeah, we never do.
We normally just, kind of are on the same page and get mad at Jared. But today we've left Jared mostly alone.
Variety is the spice of life.
Variety is the spice of life. When we come back, we'll be joined by Adam Vingan from The Athletic. We'll get into the Predators with him. What do we want to hear today from the Predators? What do we think the future looks like for Pekka Rinne? All that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Elijah Campbell here with you on this Wednesday morning. And it is that time of the week we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our good friend Adam Vingan from The Athletic. Adam, what's going on, brother? How we doing?
Happy June, everybody.
Happy June. It's good to be here. Good to be here in June, talking a little hockey. I want to start with you. We've been talking about this all morning long. Darren Donica-Chase talked about this yesterday as well. Is this past season for the Predators a success? Do you consider this season a success? What would your answer to that question be?
It's a complicated question because I think you can see it from both sides. So ultimately, the Predators ended up where I think a lot of us thought they would. They were a bubble team, finished in fourth place in the Central Division, and lost in the first round. I think in January we all would have said that seems like their likeliest trajectory. Although they had to hit rock bottom to get there, they ended up where we expected them to be. If you look at some of the deeper things of the season, and you touched on them already, you discovered that UC Saros has what it takes to be a true number one goaltender in the NHL, a question that we were asking ourselves midway through this season when he was hurt in early March and had an .895 save percentage at the time. I also believe he had a goals against average of above 3. A lot of young players have emerged and represent the next generation. Eeli Tolvanen, Tanner Jeannot, Matthew Olivier, Yakov Trenin, Alex Carrier, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a good thing. John Hines is the right coach for this team at this time. This is a team in transition. John got what he needed to get out of this group in the second half of the season. I know that UC Saros played out of his mind from mid-March through mid-May, but this turnaround, this 27-1 turnaround that they had, does not happen without John Hines. So I believe that is a positive as well. So I think I do not consider this season a success in the sense that they overachieved, but there are reasons to be optimistic about this team at the end of the postseason run for the first time in at least 3 years. You mentioned earlier the 2018 team, 2017-18 team won the President's Trophy, lost in 7 games in the second round to the second best team in the league, the Winnipeg Jets. Since then, 2019 first round loss to Dallas, nothing to feel hopeful about after that. 2020 qualifying round loss to Arizona, nothing to feel optimistic about after that. There are reasons at least to feel good about some things about this team after this first-round loss to Carolina, but they are still no closer to being a Stanley Cup contender. So it's a complicated question, but I think you can consider this season a slight success in the sense that for the first time in 3 years, as you sit back and look at how the season played out, there are reasons to have a glass-half-full look at some things compared to the past 2 seasons where, frankly, there was nothing to feel good about.
Okay, so how optimistic then? You just said, but not like they're not in contention realm right now. I mean, is that a place they can get to quickly or no?
I think it's going to take a little while. I think it's going to take a couple years. Earlier in the season when they were bad and we were talking about a full-scale rebuild, I remember Jared went apoplectic because I told him it was going to take 3 to 5 years for them to be a legitimate contender again. I don't think it's going to take that much time, but at least I feel like the team is again, I don't know if they've taken a step in the right direction, but at least they're pointed in the right direction again. Maybe they took a baby step in the right direction, but at least they're looking at that direction again. Over the past couple of years, they've been facing the wrong way. But what the question is what is it going to take for the Predators to start moving back in that right direction? I think some elements are in place there, as I just previously laid out. But at the end of the day, this core group, as we've talked about for years, that gets paid a lot of money, has not elevated its game to the level it needs to in order to get this team at a championship level. And I think it's important this offseason, and we'll talk to David Poyle tomorrow, by the way. I think it's important this offseason that David takes a non-emotional, I guess for lack of a better term, look at this core group and realizes that something needs to change. You can't keep running this same group back and hoping that the secondary players, figure it out. So, I would be surprised if all of the core members of this team are back next year. And by core, and your definition of the core might vary. Mine includes Roman Yossi, Ryan Ellis, Matthias Ekholm, Ryan Johansson, Philip Forsberg, Matthew Shane, and Victor Arvidsson. That's my core group.
Yeah.
And if I would be surprised if I think that was 7, if all 7 of them are back next year.
Adam Vingan from The Athletic on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. All right, Adam, so let's build on that for a second because, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, I think there's a thought process out there that with the expansion draft coming up, that just means that one of Johansson and Duchesne's not going to be back next year. There's the Seattle's going to take one of them off the hands of the Predators, and that they'll have one of those contracts out from underneath them. I think the chances of that happening are very, very small. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I don't think that's very likely at all. So what do you think happens in expansion? How do the Predators handle it? And what do you think the likelihood is that both Duchesne and Johansson are back on this team, back in this lineup next year?
That's a good question. I think I would give it a greater than 50% chance that both of those players are back on this team next year. I would give it a 0% chance that both of them are no longer on the team next year. And I'd probably give it like a 20% chance that one of them is not on the team next year. And you're right, Robby, that there seems to be this misconception that if the Predators expose one or both of them to the Seattle Kraken in the expansion draft next month, that Seattle is going to be jumping for joy to take one of those players. We saw it in the Vegas expansion draft 4 years ago. There are, you would hope that GMs are a bit savvier when it comes to making these, side deals than they were back then, but it did cost a lot for teams to convince the Golden Knights to take certain players, multiple draft picks, first-round picks. I think the example everybody uses is the fact that Florida gave Vegas their top 2 scorers, Jonathan Marchessault and Riley Smith. One thing that needs to be cleared up, and one thing that I think is an interesting wrinkle in all of this, is so when we talk about the 2 methods of expansion, there's a 7 forward, 3 defenseman, 1 goaltender option, and there's an 8 skater and 1 goaltender option. Most people assume, understandably so, that the 8 skater option means 4 forwards and 4 defensemen. That's incorrect. It can be any combination of 8 skaters. The New York Islanders in 2017 protected 5 defensemen and 3 forwards from the Vegas Golden Knights. So could the Predators realistically protect Roman Yossi, who, by the way, has to be protected, Matthias Ekholm, Ryan Ellis, Alex Carrier, and Dante Fabro? Yes, it could happen. Then you have to determine which 3 forwards you want to protect, which is a completely different conversation. But, this is just my gut. This is not based on any reporting. This is just my gut. That one of those 2 $8 million forwards will be protected and the other will be exposed. I don't believe that both of them will be exposed. I think one of them will be exposed. If I had to choose, it would be Matthew Shane who would be exposed. But, there's going to be a plenty of talk and plenty of speculation over the next 6 weeks between now and July 17th when the Predators and the rest of the NHL have to submit their protection list. But I think there is a greater than 50% chance that both Matthew Shane and Ryan Johansson are on the roster next season.
Well, if I'm no math major, but actually I think you're saying there's an 80% chance, right? Because you said
In
20%. You said 20% that one of them will be gone, so that's 80% that they both will be back, right?
It's good math.
I think so. I just want
Well, you're talking to a guy who had to repeat 11th grade math in his freshman year of college. so like you're not, your math is not my expertise. But yes, that sounds right.
We all could use an extra abacus. So so if they did that, let's say they did that, and they like protect your hands. I mean, if I'm the Kraken, I'll take Yarn Croker Sissons then. I'll take a nice, versatile bottom six. Yarn Crow can play all over the place at a very low rate, and thank you. And I feel good about what I've done for my team. I'm not taking Duchesne.
Right, and that's the thing that David Poyle will have to consider is it worth paying a significant amount of extra assets to convince Seattle to take Matt Duchesne, for example? Would the Predators rather bring Matt back and hope that in his third season he finally stops being unlucky? Or do you say, okay, we will give you a first-round pick or a second-round pick or prospect X so that you can have him and we don't have to worry about it anymore? I mean, those are conversations I'm sure that have already been had within the Predators front office. I mean, what would be worse? Keeping Matt Duchesne or Ryan Johansson, or guaranteeing that one of them won't be on the roster, but mortgaging future assets. If the Kraken want Rem Pitlick, do you do it? If they want Rem Pitlick in a second-round pick, do you do it? Is that worth it, losing a player who could be a third-line, fourth-line center for your team and a mid-round or high draft pick just to guarantee that Matt Duchesne won't be on the roster next year? I mean, those are very hard questions, and I do not envy the Predators front office as they figure this out.
Absolutely. Adam Vingan from The Athletic has been our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Joins us every Wednesday at 9:30. Adam, great stuff as always, brother. Appreciate you taking time to join us.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll continue to talk about the Predators on the other side. Got some of your thoughts to get to as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Final segment of the day. Thanks to Adam Vingan from The Athletic for joining us in the last segment. Joe, it's going to be fascinating to see what the Predators do. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about the expansion draft coming up, but as Adam pointed out there in the last segment, some interesting decisions on the horizon, and I mean, I guess I agree with him. I don't know that both Johansson and Duchene will be exposed, but I feel pretty confident at least one of them are going to be exposed in this expansion draft. Why wouldn't you? Like, I don't know why you wouldn't expose one of them.
I mean, the only reason you wouldn't is if you're like, no, I think those two guys next year, they're going to start producing at the level they're paid to produce. I believe that, and I'm not letting the Kraken touch them.
I don't know how you believe that.
I mean, I'm just saying that. That's how.
That's how. I don't know realistically how you could believe that at this point.
Yeah, no, I'd be surprised if one wasn't left unprotected. If you had three to protect, if you did, because it is, I mean, the Carrier thing really does it complicates things a bit, because I could actually see a team looking at him and saying, that could be nice. If you had only three to protect, who would they be?
3 forwards. It would be Philip Forsberg. It would be Luke Cunnin. And it would be, gosh.
I mean, Victor Arvidsson, unless you're trading him? You can't let him get away.
Yeah, I know. Like, if you're trading him, you still got to protect him or trade him before the expansion draft.
Right.
But you still got to protect him because you can't just lose him.
No.
So, I mean, I guess it would be Arvidsson. And then that leaves Yarncroke and Sissons exposed.
Yeah, and again, if I'm the Kraken,
say thank you very much.
Colton Sissons, he's from the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Great role player all day.
Yeah, his contract's amazing, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you want us to take who? Okay. What? And you're giving us what else in return?
Well, yeah, to your point, what would you be comfortable with if you could get Seattle to take a Johansson contract or a Duchene contract, one of the two? And I think most everybody would say Duchene would be the preference there. What would you have to give up in order to get them to do that? I mean, I think that's a big question moving forward here. Because
if Vingan's right and it would be like a Pitlick and a pick, my God.
That's a lot. That's a lot to get somebody to not play for you.
And again, this is where I understand that like some of the David Poile stuff goes overboard, but this is why people are upset at him. I mean, it's a rough situation.
Yeah. Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Dexter from Laverne texting in. I'm a diehard Chicago Blackhawks fan who absolutely hates the Predators and their referees, and even I think they're a Stanley Cup contender. Duchene is awesome.
Okay.
That's got to be sarcasm.
All right.
Thank you, Dexter.
Good job, Dexter.
We appreciate that.
Some good trolling. We don't get enough trolling on the text line.
We don't.
That's good. Other than Heidi trolling me every day.
Let's go back to the text line. Got a texter that says, I think Poile would have stuck to a youth movement had it not been for the shortened season. So going back to him, we've had multiple people over the last couple weeks, and really going back to the trade deadline discussion, talk about how David Poile said there was going to be a youth movement last offseason, and then the season comes around, and you look at the opening night roster, and there's no youth movement to speak of at that point, and how it got forced on him later in the season with the injuries and all that stuff. I do think you also have to keep in mind when you're having this discussion that nobody really knew how this season was going to go in the NHL. And think back to Predators training camp. They had like 5 guys out with COVID in training camp. So you're thinking to yourself, okay, is this going to be something that continues throughout the entire season? And if so, I mean, you got to have a lot of bodies in here to get through. Like, you got to find a way to get through the season. So I don't have as big a problem with signing some of the veterans and going that route to begin the season as I feel like some others do. Like, it sounds great to go with the youth movement, and in a way they did that, whether it was injuries forcing the hand or not. But you also have to keep in mind the COVID factor here of you had no clue how this was going to play out when the season began, and I think we've lost sight of that a little bit.
Well, and I also just people are so mad about these they said 2 things. Youth movement was one. The other was hard to play against. And, of course, early on it was all laughable.
Yeah.
But that ended up becoming a thing, right? That ended up becoming the case. And, again, I think Eric Hall ended up being a terrific signing.
I think so,
in
too.
the end, I think Cunnin, that's more of a long-term, you hope, although he's got 1 year left in his deal. But Cousins was really good. Richardson had his moments, too. I don't think those are bad signings. It's not bad to have depth or options, and those guys, when called upon, were pretty good, especially when it mattered most.
I agree. And I think, it's amazing now. We just talked about if you go that route where you're protecting 5 defensemen, like Cunnin is in my forward group that I'm protecting. 3 weeks into this season, there's no way I'm protecting Luke Cunnin. I said, oh, boy, this is looking rough with Luke Cunnin coming in here. He played great down the stretch.
Yeah, and Cunnin and Granlund had a great connection.
Yep.
So another reason, you'd like to see that connection continue.
So
go ahead.
I was just going to say real quickly, we don't know who's going to be talking today for the Predators. And as far as their players, you'll hear from John Hines and David Poile tomorrow. If Pekka Rinne is here and he's talking today, do you think we hear anything concrete about his future?
I'd be surprised. I think Pekka Rinne is unique enough in terms of it's funny we've had the Naomi Osaka discussion. It did make me think of like Pekka Rinne after Game 7 against Winnipeg. And it took every question. And again, that's not to rip on her. I'm just saying like those situations can be difficult.
Yeah.
And he handled it beautifully. I could see him maybe saying something significant today, but I guess I'd be surprised. Maybe he'll say, I've always wanted to play for the Anaheim Ducks, and I'm finally going to fulfill my dreams. Goodbye, Nashville.
Finally just riding off to Anaheim, where I'm very popular.
As long as they can reacquire Corey Perry, I'm Ducks bound.
Yes, exactly. Tired of being matched up against that guy. I'd be surprised, too. Like, my guess, if Pekka Rinne talks today, of what we'll hear is, I'm going to take some time, I'm going to talk to my family, and I'm going to come to a decision later this offseason. That's my guess at what we hear. But Pekka, generally, you can pretty much tell what he's thinking. He's pretty emotional.
So you're going to read between the lines.
Oh, I'm
no
going
matter
to.
what he says.
Oh, yeah,
You're
for sure.
You're going to draw conclusions
There'll be
regardless of the actual words.
A lot of line reading on the show tomorrow. That's what we're going to do.
Okay.
I'm just setting things up.
I'm here for that.
Absolutely. So we'll see what happens on that front. Predators players speaking today about 11:45 this morning, right around noon, coming up, and you'll hear some of the reaction to that on Darren Donick and Chase. Speaking of that, Darren Donick and Chase is coming up next. This is ESPN 102.5 The Game.